Everyone, please welcome Chef Alexander Bernard for the grand unveiling of Lumiere's winter menu. The elegant dining room erupted in applause as Chef Bernard strutted through the double doors, his tall white toque perfectly starched, his chef's coat pristine without a single splatter. He beamed at the assembled food critics, investors, and social media influencers, soaking in adoration like a sauce reduced to its essence. I watched from the corner of the kitchen, arms folded across my flour-dusted apron, as he described his masterpiece winter menu in exquisite detail. The seared scallops with brown butter espuma and winter truffle, the sous-vide venison with juniper berry reduction, the deconstructed black forest gâteau with cherry smoke and chocolate soil. My creations, every single one. My name is Mai Lin, and for the past 2 years, I've been the invisible engine behind Lumiere's meteoric rise from just another upscale Manhattan restaurant to a 2-Michelin-star sensation. Not that anyone outside the kitchen would know it. The inspiration for this menu, Alexander announced, swirling a glass of expensive Bordeaux, came to me during my recent travels through rural France and Japan. The fusion of techniques, the balance of flavors. This is the culmination of my 20 years of culinary vision. I had to give him credit for one thing. The man could lie with impressive confidence. His recent travels consisted of Instagram photos taken at the airport lounge before flying home after 2 days of schmoozing investors. Meanwhile, I had spent 3 months developing these dishes, testing each component until my fingers cramped and my back ached from 14-hour days hunched over the pass. The winter black truffle, freshly harvested from the Perigord region, is shaved tableside. He continued, nodding to the servers who began presenting the first course to the enraptured audience. I slipped back into the kitchen, where the real magic was happening. My team, because despite the restaurant's formal hierarchy, they were my team, moved with practiced precision. Jake manned the meat station, Lucia handled sauces, and Tom's assembled the delicate plate presentations I had designed. "How's the bullshit festival going out there?" Lucia muttered as she perfectly quenelled a dollop of celery root puree. "Standing ovation for Chef's vision," I replied, making air quotes with my flour-dusted fingers. Apparently, he's been very inspired by his imaginary travels. "You know, one day you should just," Jake began. I know. I cut him off, having heard this argument countless times. "Stand up, claim credit, expose the fraud." And then what? Watch Alexander use his connections to blackball me across the industry? No thanks. What my well-meaning colleagues didn't understand was that I had a plan. One that required patience. 2 years of patience to be exact. I hadn't always been the shadow executive chef at Lumiere. My journey began at the Culinary Institute of America, where I graduated top of my class. That should have launched me into a promising career. But the high-end culinary world had other ideas. Too short for the line, one Michelin-starred chef had said during an interview, as if my 5'2" frame would somehow affect my ability to create exquisite food. "Our clientele expects a certain image," another had explained delicately, his eyes sliding away from my distinctly Asian features. Then there was the ever-popular, "We're really looking for someone with a more classical background," which somehow always translated to male and European. After a dozen such rejections, I found myself taking a position at Lumiere as a line cook, several ranks below my qualifications. The executive chef at the time was Andrew Dupont, a reasonably talented but uninspired cook who relied heavily on classic French techniques without innovation. Restaurant critics described the food as competent but forgettable. When Andrew suffered a stress-induced heart attack 8 months into my tenure, sous chef Alexander Bernard was promoted to executive chef. It quickly became apparent that Alexander's talents lay in self-promotion rather than cooking. Dishes were sent back. Reviews began to sour. The owner, Maximilian Weiss, was panicking about his investment. That's when I made my first strategic move. "Chef," I had approached Alexander cautiously, "I have some ideas that might help with the soufflé issue." "The soufflés are fine," he had snapped, despite the fact that 3 had collapsed just that evening. Of course, I had replied, keeping my voice deferential. "But I studied a technique at CIA that might be more consistent, if you're interested." His ego properly massaged, Alexander had allowed me to assist with the soufflé recipe. When the perfectly risen, cloud-like desserts earned compliments from that night's diners, Alexander was quick to take credit. And so began our unspoken arrangement. I would quietly solve problems, develop dishes, and elevate the menu. Alexander would claim the spotlight. With every successful dish, I gained a little more freedom in the kitchen. Within 6 months, I was effectively running culinary operations while Alexander glad-handed diners and posed for photos. A year in, Lumiere received its first Michelin star. Tonight, with the launch of the winter menu I had spent months perfecting, critics were already whispering about a possible second star. Alexander's star, of course. Never mind. But that was about to change. As the kitchen executed the final dessert course, I discreetly checked my phone. A text from my attorney. All documents received. Proceeding as discussed. Perfect timing. I had been planning this moment since the day Alexander first took credit for my chocolate soufflé. Every recipe I created, every technique I developed, every menu item I conceived. All meticulously documented, time-stamped, and secretly filed with my attorney. Video recordings of me developing the dishes in my home kitchen, dated emails to myself detailing the concepts, even a private journal with sketches of plate presentations. For 2 years, I had built an ironclad case proving that I was the true culinary genius behind Lumiere's transformation. But documentation alone wasn't enough. I needed leverage, opportunity, and perfect timing. As fate would have it, all three converged tonight. The dining room doors swung open, and Maximilian Weiss entered the kitchen, beaming with pride at the success of the event. Behind him followed an elegant woman in her 50s whom I recognized immediately, Camille Laurent, the notoriously demanding restaurant critic for Le Monde and one of the most influential voices in global gastronomy. Alexander, magnificent menu, Maximilian boomed. Camille wishes to offer her compliments to the chef. Alexander materialized instantly, wiping his completely clean hands on a towel for theatrical effect. Madame Laurent, what an honor. Camille's shrewd eyes took in the kitchen scene. The venison was exceptional, a perfect balance of tradition and innovation. Who prepared it? I did, of course, Alexander replied smoothly, a technique I developed during my time in. Jake handled the venison station tonight. I interrupted quietly, nodding toward the lanky cook who was currently cleaning his station. Camille's gaze shifted to Jake, then back to Alexander, one eyebrow raised slightly. Under my direction, naturally, Alexander amended quickly. I oversee every dish. And the truffle espuma? Camille asked. So light, yet intensely flavored. A difficult technique to master. One of my signatures, Alexander claimed. The secret is in the temperature control and timing. Lucia created the espuma, I corrected just loud enough to be heard. She's been perfecting the technique for weeks. The kitchen had gone unnaturally quiet. Even Maximilian looked confused, unused to hearing me speak up in such situations. Camille turned to me fully now, her experienced eyes assessing. And you are? Lin, senior line cook. I extended my hand, which she shook firmly. Senior line cook, she repeated thoughtfully. Tell me, Mademoiselle Lin, who conceived the deconstructed Black Forest dessert? It was unlike any interpretation I've encountered. Alexander opened his mouth, but I spoke first. That was my creation, Madame Laurent. As was the venison dish, the truffle espuma, and in fact, every item on tonight's menu. I maintained eye contact with the critic, ignoring Alexander's sputtering and Maximilian's wide-eyed alarm. How interesting, Camille replied, a small smile playing at her lips. Because Chef Bernard has been quite detailed in interviews about his creative process for these exact dishes. I'm sure he has, I agreed pleasantly. Just as I'm sure he'd struggle to explain the actual technique behind any of them. This is absurd, Alexander interjected, his face flushing red. Mai is a competent line cook, but she's clearly seeking attention with these ridiculous claims. Then you won't mind a small demonstration, Camille suggested, her tone making it clear this wasn't really a request. Perhaps you could both explain the technique for the cherry smoke component. It was quite extraordinary. Alexander's confident facade cracked slightly. The cherry smoke is a proprietary technique that cherry pits are toasted until just before burning. I cut in, then combined with cherry wood chips in a controlled smoke chamber. The smoke is captured in a glass cloche and infused with a splash of kirsch, that's been reduced with star anise and vanilla. The cloche is sealed until service, allowing the flavors to marry but preventing the smoke from becoming bitter. The kitchen staff had abandoned any pretense of working. Everyone was watching this unprecedented confrontation unfold. Camille nodded. And the chocolate soil? It had an unusual texture, crumbly yet melts instantly on the tongue. Alexander jumped in. A combination of cocoa and tempered guanaja chocolate is freeze-dried, then pulverized with maltodextrin and a touch of sea salt, I stated. The maltodextrin creates the dissolving effect while maintaining the soil-like appearance. Camille turned to Alexander, challenge in her eyes. Would you care to demonstrate the preparation of either component, Chef Bernard? The silence that followed was deafening. This is all very theatrical, Maximilian interjected nervously, but perhaps we should continue this discussion privately. An excellent suggestion, I agreed, pulling out my phone. In fact, I've prepared some materials that might help clarify the situation. Mr. Weiss, would you mind checking your email? My attorney should have sent you something approximately. I glanced at the time, 12 minutes ago. Maximilian frowned but pulled out his phone. His expression shifted from confusion to shock as he scrolled through whatever he was seeing. What is this? He demanded. Documentation proving that I am the creator of not only tonight's menu but every signature dish Lumiere has served for the past 2 years, I replied calmly. Videos of me developing the recipes, dated emails, journal entries, and testimonials from kitchen staff. My attorney has also submitted application for copyright protection on my recipe collection, which includes everything currently on Lumiere's menu. Alexander's face had gone from red to ashen. You can't copyright recipes, he blustered, though with noticeably less confidence. Individual ingredients and basic instructions, no, I conceded. But original collections, detailed techniques, and creative expressions are indeed protected by intellectual property law, something my attorney has been very thorough about. I turned back to Maximilian, whose expression had morphed from shock to calculation. He was, after all, a businessman first. Mr. Weiss, I've valued my time at Lumiere, but I can no longer allow my work to be claimed by someone else. I'm prepared to leave, taking my recipes and techniques with me, or we can discuss a new arrangement that properly acknowledges my contributions. I didn't outline the new arrangement I had in mind. I didn't need to. The implications were clear to everyone in the room. Camille Laurent, who had been watching this drama unfold with evident fascination, finally spoke. Mr. Weiss, if I may offer an observation, the culinary world values authenticity above all. Whatever you decide here will certainly become public knowledge, as I suspect Mademoiselle Lin has ensured. She was right. My attorney had prepared press releases that would go to every major food publication by morning if necessary. Maximilian looked between Alexander, whose bluster had deflated into sullen silence, and me standing calmly with 2 years of receipts, both figurative and literal. Perhaps we should continue this in my office, he suggested. Of course, I agreed, though I believe Madame Laurent deserves to hear the resolution, given that she's been served food under false pretenses. The meeting in Maximilian's office was brief and decisive, presented with irrefutable evidence and the very real threat of public embarrassment, not to mention potential legal action. He made the only rational choice. Alexander was out. I was in. By midnight, I had signed a new contract as executive chef of Lumiere, with creative control, proper compensation, and comprehensive credit for my culinary creations. Alexander left with security escorting him, still protesting that I had somehow stolen his ideas, though he couldn't explain any of the techniques behind them. As the restaurant finally emptied, I found myself alone in the kitchen, my kitchen now, officially. I ran my hand along the cool stainless steel countertop, allowing myself a moment to savor the victory. Camille Laurent appeared in the doorway. I suspected something wasn't quite right at Lumiere, she said without preamble. Bernard speaks eloquently about food, but his eyes lack the understanding of someone who truly creates. Yours do not. Thank you for the intervention, I replied. Your presence created the perfect opportunity. I merely asked questions. You had already orchestrated everything else quite masterfully. She studied me with newfound respect. 2 years is a long time to work in the shadows. The best dishes require patience, I said simply. She nodded in acknowledgement. I look forward to seeing what you create now that you're stepping into the light, Chef Lin. Chef Lin. The title I had earned twice over, once through culinary skill and again through strategic patience. The next morning, the culinary world awoke to breaking news. Social media exploded with the dramatic story of Lumiere's sudden change in leadership. Food publications scrambled to update their previous coverage, now correctly attributing the restaurant's acclaimed dishes to their actual creator. Some former colleagues reached out with congratulations. Others contacted me for jobs, sensing that Lumiere, under my official leadership, would continue its upward trajectory. A few rival chefs, particularly those who had rejected my applications years earlier, were notably silent. 6 weeks later, Michelin awarded Lumiere its second star, this time with my name attached. The citation specifically mentioned the authentic vision and technical mastery of Chef Mai Lin. The winter menu, now properly credited, became the most sought-after reservation in Manhattan. Waiting lists extended months. Critics wrote glowing reviews that often included some variation of the true talent at Lumiere has finally been recognized. As for Alexander Bernard, he found himself suddenly unwelcome in the kitchens where he had once been celebrated. His reputation, built entirely on the work of others, collapsed like a failed soufflé. Last I heard, he was teaching basic cooking classes at a recreational school in New Jersey. On the 1-year anniversary of my promotion to executive chef, Maximilian hosted a private dinner celebrating Lumiere's continued success. The restaurant now boasted a third Michelin star, the youngest establishment in New York to achieve such an honor. After the guests had gone, Maximilian found me in the kitchen, inspecting tomorrow's mise en place. "I've been meaning to ask," he said, leaning against the counter. "You had everything documented, planned to perfection. You could have exposed Alexander at any time. Why wait 2 years?" I smiled, remembering all those nights of quiet documentation, of building my case while simultaneously building Lumiere's reputation. 3 reasons, I replied, wiping down my workspace. First, I needed to establish a clear pattern showing that I was the consistent creative force behind every successful dish. 1 or 2 recipes might be dismissed as collaboration. 2 years' worth is irrefutable. Maximilian nodded. And second, I needed Lumiere to be successful enough that you had more to lose by keeping Alexander than by promoting me. If I'd made my move too early, you might have simply replaced us both and started over. Smart, he admitted. And the third reason? I met his gaze directly. I needed to be underestimated for my plan to work. The moment someone recognized my true value, they would have either promoted me, ruining my documentation of Alexander's fraud, or seen me as a threat and forced me out. Being invisible was my greatest advantage. Maximilian considered this, then raised his glass. To visibility, then. To visibility, I agreed, earned on my terms. The culinary world loves a meteoric rise, the sudden appearance of a brilliant new chef who transforms the landscape overnight. Few understand that sometimes what appears to be an overnight success is actually years of careful preparation, of calculated patience, of working quietly while others take the spotlight. They also underestimate the power of documentation, how meticulously preserved evidence can transform years of theft into the perfect recipe for justice. These days, I still wear an apron dusted with flour, but I no longer hide in the corners of my kitchen. My name is on the menu, on the door, and on the reservations that diners make months in advance. When food critics and celebrities request to meet the chef, it's my face they see, my hands that created their meal, my vision they experience. Sometimes during service, I catch glimpses of new line cooks watching me with the same hunger I once had, not just for culinary success, but for recognition, for the chance to be seen. I make a point of learning their names, of tasting their ideas, of giving credit where it's due, because the most important lesson I learned wasn't about patience or documentation or strategic timing, though all those were critical to my success. It was that talent deserves recognition, whether it comes wrapped in a traditional package or not. And that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loud, strutting peacock demanding attention. It's the quiet one in the corner, carefully taking notes, patiently biding their time, the one nobody sees until it's too late.
My name is Jessica, and I work from home, taking care of my father-in-law at my in-laws' house. It seems that my father-in-law has always been dedicated to his work, but he overdid it and injured his back, causing his overall health to decline. Since my mother-in-law is elderly and couldn't take care of him alone, I agreed to live with my husband, Peter, at his parents' house and help out. The family home is a spacious single-story house that has been around since my father-in-law's father's time. Maybe it's because of living in such a big house, but both my mother-in-law and Peter are a bit arrogant. Despite being a housewife, my mother-in-law says that she can't live a commoner's life, and Peter, even though he doesn't earn much, insists, I'm different from the average person. I've come to know their arrogance since living with them, but as they do enough housework to compensate for their lavish spending, I've kept silent. It seems that my father-in-law shares the same sentiment as me. However, due to his health issues, he confided in me that it was difficult to contribute any more money to the family. My father-in-law understands that Peter doesn't earn much, and considering the attitudes of both my mother-in-law and Peter, it wasn't an atmosphere where they could openly discuss it. Understanding my father-in-law's feelings, I decided to be a pillar of strength for this family. I could manage my father-in-law's caregiving while working from home, because I only need to support him when necessary. My mother-in-law left the caregiving to me and continued her life as if nothing had changed, doing housework and going out with her friends. Jessica, I'm sorry. If it wasn't for my bad back, I wouldn't have had to trouble you like this. Please don't apologize. You've worked hard for the family all this time. Now, please rest. My father-in-law smiled with relief at my words. But perhaps due to his previous overwork, he gradually lost his strength. When he and I went to the hospital for his checkup, we discovered that he had cancer, which was a shock to both of us. When I told my mother-in-law and Peter about the cancer, they were shocked. They bombarded him with questions about how long he had left and how much the treatment would cost. It surprised me that my mother-in-law and Peter, who hadn't talked much with my father-in-law since his health declined, suddenly showed an interest in talking to him. One day, when Peter was at work and my mother-in-law was out with a friend, my father-in-law spoke to me. The reason those two asked about my remaining time and treatment costs is probably because they're eyeing my inheritance. They must be planning to keep me in good spirits until I die, wondering how much I'll leave them. Jessica, this might cause you some discomfort, but I'm on your side. Thank you for not abandoning our family. As my father-in-law said, Peter and my mother-in-law seemed displeased that I spent a lot of time with him, and they started making snide remarks. Come to think of it, why does my daughter-in-law stay at home all the time without doing any housework? My mother-in-law started talking to Peter during dinner. Peter grimaced and replied, I don't know. She quit her job without telling me and started staying at home. It's really annoying. Maybe she came to this house aiming for Dad's money. They started saying such mean things right in front of me. We usually ate dinner with just the three of us, my mother-in-law, Peter, and I, as my father-in-law ate in his own room. Left without any support, I was forced to hear harsh words from both of them. I am working, I tried to argue, but was told, what are you talking about? You haven't worked since you came to this house. Don't lie when you haven't earned a single penny. The reason we can live comfortably is because Peter goes out and works for us. You do nothing all day and just idle around the house. They made these accusations without even checking what I was doing at home. Thinking that continuing my meal here would only result in more complaints, I decided to take the meal to my father-in-law's room. But at that moment, my mother-in-law snatched the tray from my hands. I have no intention of letting a woman like you, who's after my husband's money, serve him food. I will take it myself. I had been preparing nutritious meals based on my father-in-law's requests, but my mother-in-law pretended not to know that and tried to take the completed meal as if she made it by herself. I was disappointed in my mother-in-law's scheming and credit-stealing behavior. Thinking that arguing would only trouble my father-in-law, I said to my mother-in-law, please go ahead and let her serve the meal. Peter and his mother were trying to separate me from my father-in-law. Even when my father-in-law was hospitalized, I was not allowed to visit him. However, I was in contact with my father-in-law through my mobile phone. It seemed that Peter and his mother, fearing that I might inherit some of my father-in-law's estate since I had been caring for him, were trying to turn him against me. Despite the fact that it was Peter and his mother who were keeping me away from my father-in-law, I was disgusted to hear that they were saying I disliked taking care of him. It seems that my father-in-law just nodded along and ignored their words in order to protect me from further blame from them. Jessica, those two said you took money from the house and even talked about divorce. My father-in-law's message made me laugh. There had been no talk of divorce from Peter, and for some reason, they were not trying to kick me out of the house either. Perhaps they wanted to keep an eye on my movements. Since my father-in-law and I were close, they probably thought that if I was kicked out of the house, I would be free to go and visit him. Indeed, if I divorced Peter and was kicked out of the house, I would be free from their constraints and would visit my benefactor, my father-in-law. Peter and his mother seemed to understand me well. Afterwards, I continued my remote work, enduring criticism from Peter and his mother and keeping in touch with my father-in-law. However, half a year later, my father-in-law passed away. I busied myself with arranging the funeral in order to endure my grief. Peter and his mother did not help with the funeral arrangements, so I arranged things as my father-in-law had wished. About a week after the funeral, there was an incident. While I was working from home, Peter and his mother suddenly came into the room. They had never entered my room like this before, so I was surprised, but quickly saved my data and turned off my computer. What's wrong? Don't you realize what you're doing? I know you've been embezzling the household's money. It seems you also received money from my husband. What a despicable woman. What do you mean? I could not understand a word of what my mother-in-law was saying. I had never received any money from my father-in-law. I had no idea how there could be such a misunderstanding. In my confusion, Peter glared at me and then said, "You cozied up to my dad, showing off your youth to get his money. You betrayed me, your own husband." I wished he wouldn't make such baseless and dirty assumptions. I had always valued my relationship with my father-in-law and had sincerely taken care of him. I never did anything to cozy up to him. Aren't you misunderstanding? I never did anything like that. However, they didn't believe me. They began packing up my belongings without my consent. Wait a minute, please. You need to leave this house. I have prepared the divorce papers, so sign them quickly and then go turn them in. Peter yelled this, throwing the divorce papers at me. As expected, they were afraid I would visit my father-in-law in the hospital, and that's why they hadn't brought up divorce before. You are no longer needed in this house. Get out, you bum. My mother-in-law yelled at me, throwing clothes at me. Peter hurled insults at me, saying, "You freeloader," and handed me a pen to sign the divorce papers. After being treated so horribly, I knew there was no point in staying in this house. Since my father-in-law's funeral was over, I quickly signed the divorce papers. Okay, I'll leave. I'll pack my things myself so you don't need to help me. As I said that, Peter and his mother, who had no intention of helping, left the room looking relieved. I packed my belongings, found a new place to live, and promptly left their house. When I informed Peter and my mother-in-law that I had submitted the divorce papers, they were pleased. They would be having a hard time from here on out, so they should enjoy this moment while it lasts. Within a month of me leaving the house, Peter called. I was working and ignored his call, but later, I received an email from him. "Hey, all the money in the house is gone. You stole it, didn't you?" Now I was being accused of theft. I hadn't stolen anything. My father-in-law had kept the money securely, and there wasn't any readily accessible cash in the house, so even if they searched, they wouldn't find any. We should discuss the money when we talk about the inheritance. I replied to his email, but I received no reply from him. It seemed that he had completely forgotten about the inheritance discussion. After a while, I received contact about setting up a meeting regarding the inheritance. I had decided not to block their contact until I was called for such a meeting, so I headed to my former in-law's house as instructed. It's odd to call it my in-law's house since Peter and I are now divorced. When I arrived, my mother-in-law, Peter, and another man in a suit were waiting in the living room. When the man read the will, Peter and my mother-in-law turned pale. The majority of my father-in-law's estate was left to me, the house to my mother-in-law, and the remaining money to Peter. Hearing this, my mother-in-law screamed, "That's a lie. Why does this woman inherit the majority of the estate? The only family of that man are myself and Peter. This woman is a stranger." The man in the suit was shocked at how Peter's mother dramatically changed, almost lunging forward in her agitation. Peter glared at me and said, "It's ridiculous that most of the inheritance is going to you. Did you manipulate Dad or something?" Determined to end my relationship with Peter and my mother-in-law, I decided to ask something that had been on my mind. "By the way, why did you think I was getting money from your father?" "Stop changing the subject. I just want to clear up any doubts since we won't be involved with each other anymore. Can you just tell me?" Dad said it last time. "Jessica, money every month." His words were broken because he wasn't fully conscious, but he definitely said it. "That means Dad was lending you money every month, right? You've got it backwards." "What?" Finally, I understood why Peter and my mother-in-law had mistakenly thought that I was borrowing money from my father-in-law. In reality, I was the one contributing about $5,500 every month to my father-in-law, or rather, to their house. Maybe he was talking about me providing $5,500 monthly as living expenses. He used to apologize for taking money from me every month. "What? $5,500 every month? Why were you contributing money to the house?" "Because neither you nor your mother contributed a single penny, despite your father being unable to work anymore. That's why I was supporting this house. I felt uncomfortable not contributing while living here. But still, $5,500. The maintenance of your big house and your mother's spending made it that much. But I wanted to enjoy the good food and other benefits that came with it, so I kept quiet. I had been satisfied with our life because I had my father-in-law on my side and I wasn't particularly troubled, so I never mentioned anything to Peter or my mother-in-law. But I was very surprised that most of the inheritance would be coming to me. If the majority of the inheritance doesn't go to Peter and my mother-in-law, it will be difficult for them to pay the house's maintenance and other living expenses. How could you afford to pay $5,500 every month? You weren't working, were you? I told you that I was working from home, remember? We had that conversation before I moved in. Have you forgotten? Did you tell me something like that? Apparently, Peter had completely forgotten about our conversation. I was astounded. If Peter didn't remember our conversation, my mother-in-law probably didn't know either. Both of them must have thought I was unemployed. If I wasn't working, it would mean that I was just idling around at home every day after my father-in-law was hospitalized. But I'm not the type to do nothing and just expect to be taken care of. Then, let's start over, you and me. What? I couldn't believe my ears. I asked for a divorce because I thought you were a freeloader. You must have been upset and signed the divorce papers thinking you were being abandoned. If you're not unemployed, there's no reason for us to be divorced. What? I don't understand. You love me, right? You must have hated divorcing me. I'm saying that I'll take back the divorce, so come back home. What a joke. Why should I take care of you and your mother? I stayed because your father was kind, and I wanted to repay him, but I have no love left for you and your mother. You always insulted me and were sarcastic. Why should I keep supporting people like that? Your feelings for me, have they cooled off? Of course, there's no love left. At this moment, Peter was receiving the biggest shock of his life. He must have genuinely believed that I was still infatuated with him. All this time, instead of being on my side, he conspired with my mother-in-law to kick me out of the house. If he thought that I still liked him after that, he's a complete fool. I sighed deeply. My mother-in-law, advised by the man in the suit, finally understood that they would receive hardly any inheritance and was deeply disappointed. You and your mother will have to live together from now on. I won't support you with any more of my money. With your monthly salary of $2,000, you will have to adjust your lifestyles. I had no intention whatsoever of renouncing my inheritance rights for Peter and my mother-in-law. I am not that kind-hearted. Ignoring their demands for money, I left the house. I had no plans to interact with Peter and my mother-in-law in the future, so I blocked their contact and changed my mobile phone. Of course, Peter and my mother-in-law don't know my current address. After a while, I heard that Peter and my mother-in-law had visited my parents' house. My parents live far away, and I was surprised to hear that they had suddenly shown up there. According to my mother, Peter and my mother-in-law seemed to think that I was living there. Bring out Jessica immediately. Even if we're divorced, she is still my wife. All the wife's money is mine. I will never forgive her for running away with my property. If you hide her, I can't promise what will happen to you. Peter and my mother-in-law were shouting in front of my parents' house. My parents were frightened and immediately called the police. Surprisingly, when the police arrived, Peter and my mother-in-law assaulted the officers, injuring them, and were then taken into custody. I learned that they had sold the large house they lived in and moved to a rundown apartment. However, they still continued their lavish lifestyle and naturally fell into financial difficulty. They resorted to crime, like stealing beef from the local supermarket, showing a serious decline in their overall situation. Knowing they had no intention of earning money and were prone to criminal behavior, I became terrified. Now it seems that they are incarcerated. If they are ever released from prison, to prevent them from finding me, I have told people around me about them and ensured that my personal information remains confidential. My parents are also selling their current house and starting a new life in the countryside, as they had planned before, so Peter and my mother-in-law won't be able to find them. My name is Lucy. I live with my husband, Michael. We first met back in our student days. We started dating soon after and continued our relationship through the transition from students to working adults. Then, Michael proposed, and that led us to marriage. Since we had a loving relationship and lived together, other than the fact of being officially married, not much changed after the wedding, and we have been living peacefully as a couple without any conflicts. We were seen by our in-laws as a harmonious and peaceful pair. However, our gentle nature may have seemed too soft to those two. Those two refers to my sister-in-law, Emily, and her husband, Richard. They had married 2 years before us. Having been with Michael for a long time, I was well aware of his sister's marriage, too. However, it seemed that Emily's wedding wasn't entirely smooth. She seemed to be the type who cared about appearances, declaring, "I will only invite women who look less attractive than me to my wedding," leaving her parents-in-law bewildered. I wonder what her friends, who were invited to the wedding, would think if they heard that. She must not have considered that at all to be able to say such things. I was told she uttered those words in front of the friends she invited, and the room was instantly enveloped in silence. One woman said, "Isn't that too much?" But she retorted, "Stop being jealous of me. You should be grateful I invited you all, who are almost in your 30s. Whether Richard's friends see you all as potential partners is another matter," and that made the atmosphere even colder. Despite being such a rude person, I couldn't understand why Richard doesn't divorce her. But the answer was quite simple. Richard, just like Emily, is someone who makes impolite comments. Far from admonishing Emily for mocking their wedding guests, Richard added insult to injury by saying, "Emily, it's cruel to confront them with the truth. Even ugly people have feelings." As a result, more of their own friends kept their distance from them. Even those who weren't invited to the wedding cut their ties with them after hearing stories from the attendees. While friends can sever connections, we, being relatives, find it hard to do so. This apartment is quite splendid. Normally, you'd think of a detached house as a mansion, but with this much space, even an apartment can be called a mansion. Emily suddenly visited our apartment and expressed her impression as she looked around. I was baffled by her unexpected visit. However, she proceeded to walk down the hall, opening doors one after another. All I could do was stand there, dumbfounded. Michael, her own brother, was just as surprised, standing with his mouth agape. While we were stunned, Emily freely snooped around our home. "Where are the beer and snacks?" Richard asked us, opening the fridge without permission. I couldn't help but be astonished by the audacity of my brother-in-law and his wife. In any typical household, opening doors and refrigerators without asking is considered rude, something we're all taught. I was just dumbfounded by their inability to follow such basic courtesy. "I'm sorry, but may I ask what brings you here today?" I inquired after taking a deep breath to compose myself. "Didn't you invite Mom and Dad over to this apartment? It only makes sense that I, as your sister, would be welcome too, right? By the way, why haven't you offered any tea yet?" she declared while munching on snacks she found in the kitchen cabinet without our consent. Eating snacks from the shelf without asking, then demanding tea? With a heavy heart, I served tea to Emily and Richard. It's true that a few days ago, we did invite my parents-in-law over, but that was for a special reason, not to show off our home. The term invite felt a bit off to begin with. "I bet you served Mom and Dad some delicious sweets and fancy tea, huh? After all, you need to stay in Dad's good books, don't you?" she said, looking at us with an uncomfortable gaze, laced with sarcasm. Neither Michael nor I could think of any reason to ingratiate ourselves with my father-in-law. We've never used flattery just to attract his attention. We just couldn't grasp whatever Emily was trying to say. "What are you getting at, Emily?" "We're not trying to get Dad to like us or anything," Michael inquired. With a chuckle, Emily retorted, "You wouldn't be able to stay at the company if you don't lick his boots, right?" Michael and I exchanged glances, puzzled. True, my father-in-law runs a business, and Michael is one of his employees. But Michael works there earnestly. Under his father, who doesn't play favorites, he's been through tough training and now holds a position managing a team. There's no need for sycophancy to keep his job. Of course, it's only proper to show due respect to his father, the CEO of the company. I'm the center of the family, and Michael came into the picture later, right? So Michael should be concerned about Dad's feelings and mine. If I get upset, I could just ask Dad to kick you out of the company, she asserted confidently. Michael and I could only exchange looks. We had absolutely no idea what she was aiming for. Richard smirked proudly as Emily declared that we'd lose our jobs if we didn't bow down to her. I probably wasn't the only one who felt uncomfortable under his gaze. After making remarks beyond our comprehension, they left. They left behind scattered snacks and spilled tea. Sighing, we began to clean up quickly. What was she trying to say? That she'd have me fired? Michael murmured, "Does Emily really have a say in personnel decisions?" I asked, and Michael shook his head. "No way. As you know, Dad's not especially soft on family members. If anything, he's pretty strict. Seeing Dad's strictness makes me think Mom spoiled Emily too much when she was young," he said, "right? Dad wouldn't give Emily special treatment, that's for sure," I agreed. My mother-in-law coddled young Emily to an extreme and now deeply regrets it, saying she wishes she could hide in a hole for how she raised her. I can't help but feel pity for my parents-in-law, for the disappointment they must feel towards their daughter's transformation into someone they didn't intend her to be. But why did Emily say she would fire you? Was there some kind of trouble? That's a real mystery. Michael and I could only shrug in confusion. No matter how much we ponder, Emily's true intentions were beyond us. Deciding not to dwell on it, I moved on to the next task at hand. That task was preparing to move. With this, most of the packing is done. Next is the big move, huh? After completing the paperwork and shipping the boxes, I took a flight to France. What was happening back in our home in the US was beyond my imagination. Upon landing in France and turning on my phone, I discovered over 10 voicemail messages from Emily. Surprised, I thought of my in-laws. Despite my reservations, I immediately contacted her. "Emily, I just checked my phone. Is everything okay?" I asked urgently. The reply I received was completely unexpected. Finally got through to you. Since you didn't respond, Richard and I had a delightful time on your and Michael's bed," she said. What? I couldn't comprehend what she was saying and just tilted my head in confusion. Emily sounded pleased, so it seemed unlikely that anything had happened to my in-laws. "So, I'm at your apartment now," You both seem to be away and we're just enjoying this luxurious space, she continued. Apartment. Our apartment where we used to live? Why are you there? And what do you mean by delightful time with your husband? I asked, bewildered. I was just holding my head, confused. I had known of Emily and Richard's impudence, but I never imagined it would come to this. They had prepared a spare key to use in our absence. This seemed to have been planned all along. Oh yes, I got rid of all your stuff, she exclaimed. What? I was in shock, because this wonderful home is ours now. We'll set aside Michael's things until he comes to pick them up. I've disliked you since way back. This is my revenge, she declared. I see. You were critical even at your own wedding about others' appearances. I never thought you'd turn that criticism on me. Before evaluating others' faces, you should take a look at the darkness in your own heart, I said. Huh? She seemed perplexed. You said you disposed of my things, right? I asked to confirm. Yes, I threw them out. By the way, what was with your stuff? There were several albums, but not a single photo of you in them. They were all pictures with Michael at the center. And in all of them, he's not even looking at the camera. You really have no skill in taking photos. The albums were creepy, so I threw them out this morning, she bragged. Emily proudly detailed how she had thrown everything away. She boasted about discarding the clothes in the closet, the books and diaries on the bookshelves, and selling the computer and other electronics to someone she knew. I didn't get upset or raise my voice because those belongings weren't mine. So, how about it? Aren't you going to cry and ask me why I threw them away? If you cry, won't your face become even uglier? She taunted. Sorry to burst your bubble while you're enjoying throwing away someone else's stuff. But just so you know, Michael and I got divorced and I now live overseas, I informed her. What? That means the things you disposed of weren't mine. Wait a minute. You lived in this apartment with Michael, right? And Michael's clothes are still here. How can Michael's things be here and not yours? That's because I left the apartment when we got divorced. No way. You two always seemed so happy together. Emily's surprise was understandable. Nonetheless, Michael and I were indeed divorced. Actually, I split up with Michael because of your parents' request. What? Remember the photos in the album you said you threw away? The ones where Michael isn't looking at the camera? Yes, I remember. But those photos were taken by a woman who was obsessed with Michael. They're candid. That's why he wasn't looking at the camera. What? Michael and I had been troubled by that woman for a long time. We hoped she would give up on him once we were married. However, things were not that simple. She was convinced Michael was her destiny and interfered with our marriage multiple times. We managed not to invite her to the wedding, but her furious father turned out to be the head of a major corporation that my father-in-law, as a business owner, respected. Disregarding my daughter's feelings and proceeding with another woman? What's the meaning of this? If you don't marry my daughter, your business is over, he threatened without hesitation. When I mentioned this, Emily seemed lost for words in shock. After a moment, I called out, "Hello." And she snapped back, asking cautiously, "That woman, is she Rachel by any chance?" "Yes, that's right." "You know Rachel, don't you? I heard she's your and Michael's childhood friend." "That Rachel? Is it really that Rachel?" It seemed Rachel had misunderstood their childhood friendship as something more and had harbored this misconception for years. Suddenly, Emily's cheerful tone changed drastically. "Don't tell me. After you got divorced and left this apartment, Rachel moved in to live here with Michael." "Exactly. So the photo albums, clothes, and diaries I got rid of they would all belong to Rachel, wouldn't they?" The moment she realized the situation, she inadvertently gasped. It seemed Rachel was someone Emily would rather avoid. Emily must have wanted to avoid unnecessary involvement with a woman whose father runs an even larger corporation than her own father. But now it's too late. "Hey, Lucy, can't we do something even now? If you come over quickly and explain you did it out of spite because she took Michael away. As I mentioned before, I'm overseas now, so I can't be there instantly. Bro." She'll definitely scold me. She's the type to bring her parents into even the smallest conflict and press the issue to the end. And to think I did it with my husband on the bed that was meant for her and Michael. It's too late for regrets now. And honestly, it's best to just tell the truth. Don't you think? I can't do that. Oh, I know. I'll clean up quickly and hide somewhere. I'm going to run away. If anyone asks, I'll just say Lucy caused it all. I told her that would be difficult. Why would that be difficult? Because I accepted a substantial amount of money from Rachel to put some distance with her dream life with Michael, and I moved overseas to live a life I've always dreamed of. I've already told her that, but she was worried I might come back for Michael, so she gave me her contact information, insisting I call her as soon as I arrived overseas. I just sent her a photo of myself here and a screenshot from Messenger confirming you and Richard entered the apartment without permission. She just contacted me saying she's already at the apartment. Oh, wait, there's the intercom. With those words, the call ended. Presumably, Rachel, accompanied by her father's men, swiftly took care of Emily and Richard. While Emily and Rachel's standoff continued, I focused on settling into my new life here. Sorry I'm late, Lucy, Michael said with a smile as he hurried over to me at the airport. Because she was unable to give up on Michael, Rachel watched us dissolve our relationship in front of her and we decided to hastily escape abroad. It was convenient for us as my in-laws and their company were at a standstill, possibly considering liquidation. Emily had long believed she would take over the company, but now faced the reality of it shutting down without having worked today. In the end, Rachel forced Emily and Richard into hard labor at a company her father owned, angry that they had tainted her home. Surprisingly, Rachel began to show affection towards Richard, and now Emily is left to work alone, struggling to pay off her debt to Rachel. We decided to enjoy our peaceful days in a new land, free from the troubles of Rachel and the burdensome siblings-in-law. Seeing my husband, who usually never showed tears, shedding them moved something inside me. Despite having paid off a massive debt of $200,000 together, rebuilding the nostalgic diner in my husband's hometown, and even building a comfortable two-family home for my mother-in-law, the news that all of it was to be handed over to my brother-in-law brought up feelings of shock and anger. I absolutely cannot accept this. I won't remain silent any longer. I'll make them regret this. With my heart racing, I picked up my cell phone. The first step of my strategy against them begins now. My name is Mia. At 30, I am hustling every day at a bustling management consulting firm in the city center. On the other hand, my beloved husband, Michael, showcases his skills as an assistant chef at a well-reputed restaurant. He's a man of few words, but has a warm heart. That day, we spent a delightful dinner time at our cozy home with our mutual friend, Rachel. Wait, seriously? You guys are moving back to your hometown? She exclaimed, swirling her wine glass. Yes, we're concerned about Michael's father's health. Michael will be taking over the family diner and we'll start our new life there, I replied with a smile. Mia, I'm truly sorry you would have to quit your job, but that diner is special to me. It's where my father introduced me to the world of cooking. Michael, I understand, but Rachel, slightly annoyed, picked at the vibrant dish Michael had meticulously prepared. Rachel and Michael grew up near the serene beaches of a city in Cape Prefecture. I first met her on our university campus after she moved to the city for her studies. Born into a wealthy family, Rachel is bubbly and a bit naive. She appears carefree but has an enigmatic charm that draws people to her. But we're quite different. We hit it off instantly. It was Rachel who excitedly introduced Michael to me, saying, "You two would be perfect together." But I feel a bit sad. Mia, you're working hard in the business world, and Michael is a chef at an amazing restaurant. Weren't you guys dreaming and planning for the future? Are you sure it's okay? Thank you for your concern, Rachel. But times have changed, and with technology advancements, I can work from home. More than anything, I want to be by Michael's side, supporting him. Come on, cheer up. Next time you visit, we'll treat you to Michael's cooking. Look forward to it. Thanks, Mia. Should we pour some more wine? As Michael walked to the kitchen, he said with a smile, "Sure thing." After that, Rachel gently grabbed my arm and whispered, "Mia, I'm a bit worried, but I know you'll be okay. Stay strong." At that heartwarming moment, I realized how blessed I was to have such a wonderful friend. A mix of excitement and anticipation enveloped us as we began our new life. We soon relocated to our new home in a city. The future holds uncertainties, and little did we know what was waiting for us. In the hospital room, my father-in-law looked astonishingly frail. "Michael, the doctor says I don't have much time left." He was a man of few words, but shared a deep bond with Michael, showing love more through actions and expressions than words. He dedicated his life to cooking, and his only hobby was collecting plates. "Dad, we're here with you." "Yes, we're here for you. Please, don't worry." With Michael's gentle smile and comforting hand, my father-in-law seemed to relax. "Michael, you're truly blessed. You found a wonderful wife." His kind words deeply touched me, and I felt tears welling up. Just then, the door burst open. "Oh, you're here? You should have told me. I have something to discuss," my mother-in-law said, sounding somewhat angry. I was aware of her high blood pressure and was worried getting upset might make it worse. Born into a somewhat renowned family in the town, she was doted on by her grandparents. She's a bit self-centered, and it seemed my father-in-law often yielded to her. Michael's relationship with his mother was also a bit complicated. Michael resembles his father, while on the other hand, his younger brother Peter looks just like their mother. This is why my mother-in-law has always been fond of Peter and often treated Michael coldly. To be honest, I was also bothered by her occasional whims. "Actually, I'm worried about the diner, especially about the finances," my mother-in-law began. As she spoke, the situation revealed itself to be more serious than we imagined. Mother-in-law owns the diner and lives on the second floor of the building where it is located. The diner was situated in a rural town with few similar establishments around, and thanks to father-in-law's cooking skills, it was very popular among the locals. However, managing it wasn't easy. With my father-in-law's declining health, there were more days when he couldn't cook. Meanwhile, mother-in-law's old apartment next door suffered termite damage. Because it was a precious property to her, it was demolished and repaired at a huge cost, leading to a staggering debt of $200,000. "Mom, why didn't you take action before it came to this?" exclaimed Michael. "You could have just sold the land or the diner." But mother-in-law, with tears in her eyes, replied, "This land and the diner have been protected by our ancestors. I can't just give them up, and I hope the diner that your father worked so hard to protect can continue." At that moment, Michael's eyes filled with sadness. But I squeezed his hand and reassured him, "It's okay. Let's figure it out together." And so, our new challenge began. Actually, I had inherited $250,000 from my father. When I suggested using it to repay the debt, Michael shed tears of gratitude. The money was for my dream, but we decided to use it to build our new life together. Michael's cooking truly reminded everyone of father-in-law's flavors. The locals commented, "This flavor is nostalgic," and were delighted. I used my previous job experience to renovate the parking lot, redecorate the interior, and promote the diner online. Its popularity soared. Thanks to a nearby tourist attraction, our diner quickly became a local hotspot. However, amidst this fortune, we faced a devastating event. Father-in-law, who had been ill, peacefully passed away. The only ones by his side were Michael and me. In his eyes, relief and sadness mingled. "Michael, the diner. Take care of your mother." His voice was faint, and his words were fragmented. But his feelings came through clearly. "Don't worry, Dad. I will cherish and continue it." Michael responded. Tears welled up in our eyes as we witnessed the father-in-law's last moments. On the day of the funeral, mother-in-law's face was shrouded in deep sorrow. Beside her, Peter and his wife, Michelle, were quietly conversing. All the funeral arrangements became our responsibility, and amidst the bustle, Peter cracked a little joke. "Mia, you're so reliable, being a former career woman. But it must be nice to have taken over the dinner." His words had a hint of envy. Michael had overcome his youthful difficulties with his father's support and his own efforts. On the other hand, Peter seemed to have had an easier path, growing up with the abundant love of their mother. Now, Peter works in sales in the next town and seems to be living happily with his wonderful wife. Both of us graduated from business schools, but my university turned out to be slightly more prestigious. Perhaps that's what bothers Peter a little? He occasionally teases or makes sarcastic remarks. It seems his mother never told him about our struggles or debts, so he might not know the true extent of our efforts. His words occasionally annoy me, but I've decided not to let my emotions get the better of me. Then, one day, I suddenly heard Michelle scream. Rushing over, we found mother-in-law collapsed on the ground, her face pale. Everyone panicked, and we immediately called an ambulance. At the hospital, we learned she had suffered a stroke. She had hypertension, and the combined stress and lack of sleep likely contributed. Fortunately, her life wasn't in danger, but she suffered mild paralysis and would need our support from now on. On the evening before the month memorial of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law called us to the living room and made a surprising proposal. Hey, we've finally settled the debt issue, and the diner seems really busy. Doesn't it? If it's okay, I've been thinking about building a house on the apartment site where the whole family can live. I'm getting older, and living on the second floor is tough for me. We have your father's insurance money, so I thought maybe we could use a bit of it. I was a bit taken aback by this suggestion. Having just repaid the debt, I hadn't expected such a big proposal. But there's some truth to what my mother-in-law says. Living on the second floor might be tough for her. We also pay quite a rent for our apartment located a bit far away. Moreover, with proper planning, we might be able to expand the shop a bit more. And then the last words of my father-in-law come to mind. His heartfelt wish was for the family to get along and to keep the diner going. For that reason, even if I didn't get along with my mother-in-law, I decided to give it my all. After much consideration, we decided to move forward with building a two-family house. We have the insurance money my father-in-law left us, but it might not be enough on its own. In the end, we used almost all of the savings we had accumulated for our dreams. But we believed it was the best choice and proceeded with it. Seeing Michael a bit down, he said, "Our dream feels a bit distant now." I'm sorry, lowering his eyes. Seeing that face, my love for Michael grew even stronger. It's okay. The diner is picking up and we'll surely save money again. Besides, a new house is exciting, right? Let's live happily together, I said, trying to cheer him up. About the new house, Peter introduced us to a construction company that is new and seems to be trending. Our first choice was to rely on a different company that had been trusted in the local area for a long time. But my mother-in-law and Peter highly recommended it, and we were also busy preparing for the reopening of our shop, so we ended up entrusting it to them. And then the new house was completed. It's very modern and stylish, especially the first floor, designed to be comfortable even for older people. And on the second floor, there was an amazing kitchen that Michael would love. On the day of the housewarming for our new home, we gathered in high spirits. My mother-in-law, us as a couple, Peter and the rest. We celebrated the start in our new house and had a wonderful time together. On the day of the housewarming, my mother-in-law, sitting in a wheelchair, opened her mouth somewhat awkwardly. "Hey, I have something serious to talk about." Hearing this, a chilling feeling spread in our hearts. Such a tone usually meant some complicated news was coming. Actually, I'm thinking of entrusting the diner to Peter. Since Peter and his family have promised to take care of me, this house might become theirs too. You two might want to go back to your old life in New York. Her words hit us like a bucket of cold water poured over our heads. The money we had paid, the diner that Michael rebuilt with sleepless nights, and the house we built to live together and care for her, all of it was going to be handed over to Peter so easily. Peter smiled confidently and said, "This house has turned out pretty nice, hasn't it? Don't worry about the diner or Mom, leave it to me." Michelle, too, with sparkling eyes, said excitedly, "This new kitchen seems really convenient. Can't wait to use it. That kitchen was specially designed for Michael. I was utterly disoriented. It was unbelievable and felt like a cruel joke. The cherished, old-fashioned, warm-hearted box of dishes that my father-in-law had treasured was suddenly deemed in the way by Peter. To put it more directly, my emotions were in turmoil. "All right, it's time for you to leave now." Her voice had an indescribable coldness, like a winter wind. For a moment, we felt frozen in place. Holding my husband's hand, I nodded silently and left the room. As we exited the house, the smug smiles of my mother-in-law and Peter were visible from behind. Just seeing that made my blood boil. "Mia, I'm sorry. I didn't expect this to happen." It was rare to see my husband cry. Seeing him like that, the small flame of anger inside me grew. But we couldn't be discouraged by this. Determined, I grabbed my phone and called my reliable friend, Rachel. "Hello, how have you been?" Upon telling her about the recent events, Rachel responded firmly. "Wait, are you both sure about this?" "Yes, we're definitely going down this path." Time passed and we, as a couple, decided to open a new restaurant cafe on a lovely corner in City A. On a breezy day, we were present at the opening event, serving as the chef and owner. Michael was the head chef, and I worked as the owner and in charge of publicity. Surprisingly, Rachel came from a family that owns a large piece of land in the city of A, and she herself had a great sense of business. She had always dreamt of starting something in this place, and while keeping an eye on Michael's family business, she offered us this opportunity. The content of the little secret talk I had with Rachel that night was precisely about this new business. Our dream of opening our own restaurant became a reality with Rachel's support. Thanks to the dishes made by Michael and the effective advertising I did, the restaurant became a hot topic even before its opening. And on that day, holding champagne in our hands, Rachel and I were having a great time in the restaurant. But suddenly, there was a surprised voice saying, "What's this?" Turning around, Peter and my mother-in-law were standing at the entrance with shocked expressions. "Why are you two here?" Michael asked with a hint of confusion but remained calm. "Huh? I had no idea you guys opened a restaurant so close by." The voice of the mother-in-law carried a mix of surprise and a bit of anxiety. "I think the quality of a store doesn't drop because of the surrounding environment. Maybe after Michael left, the food quality dropped, so the locals started looking for a different place. Look at the reviews on word-of-mouth sites." I replied with a bit of sympathy. Peter, his face turning bright red, hesitated a bit and then started to speak. "Even so, we can't expect them to cover the repair costs for that house. After all, it's a house we worked hard to build," Michael replied with a bit of concern. "That house. I never imagined it would have so many problems." Peter's voice trembled. "Actually, the two-family house we built had various issues. There were leaks when it rained, and the house itself was leaning. And the contractor that Peter had trusted disappeared as soon as problems arose. It seemed that Peter and his mother had really struggled with this. I've been thinking, wasn't the original plan to ask a local, reputable contractor?" Michael gently inquired. "But since Peter decided, we went with that contractor. Still, the contract was in your mother's name, so I don't think it's our responsibility, right? Also, I heard Michelle has already left the store. On top of the business struggles, taking care of the mother-in-law, she must have had a hard time too," I added with concern. Peter, trying to raise his voice, started, "I never imagined that." But then a cheerful sound interrupted him. The next moment, champagne was pouring over Peter's head like a shower. "Oops, sorry," Rachel said with a smile, holding the champagne bottle. "Peter, what goes around comes around, right? Besides, now is our celebration time. Don't disturb and please leave." Drenched in champagne, Peter and the surprised mother-in-law left the venue in embarrassment. We apologized to all the guests, repeatedly saying, "We are truly sorry," but deep down, we were relieved. Time really flies, doesn't it? It's already been a year. It seems that Peter and his mother's store didn't go well. Peter is now working at a nearby convenience store while taking care of his mother in their rundown house. I heard about it from a neighborhood granny recently. I used to receive calls from Peter and his mother asking for help, but now I just ignore them. On the other hand, we are having very busy days. Customers are constantly flocking for Michael's dishes and desserts, and we see new faces almost every day. Rachel often says, "This was the right choice." Riding on that wave, I've become somewhat of a business guru in City A, being sought after for advice by various stores. We found our father-in-law's old box. While sorting through the old dishes and trinkets, we made an unexpected discovery, a heartwarming handwritten note in our father-in-law's handwriting. "Michael, I'm sorry. What I wanted to leave for you was not constraints, but freedom and happiness. The antiques in this box, I believe, are quite valuable. Show them to an expert. I'm sure you'll be surprised," it read warmly. Touched by our father-in-law's intent to leave us something thoughtful till the end, we got teary-eyed. When we had the antiques appraised as a small surprise, they turned out to be worth more than we thought. But more than its monetary value, we cherish it as something filled with our father-in-law's love. We have no intention of selling it. Instead, we've placed it in a special spot in our home, and every day, while reminiscing about our times with our father-in-law, we spend peaceful and happy moments. I've planned a trip to Cancun this time. Huh? A trip to Cancun. Hearing my mother-in-law say this with a smile, I harbored doubts. Despite being burdened with a huge debt and struggling to make monthly repayments, why travel abroad? Moreover, despite the fact that I send money every month, why is she going to Cancun alone? I absolutely cannot accept this. This is no joke. As I raised my voice in anger, my mother-in-law looked puzzled. Yes, this was all my husband's scheme. I was shocked by this certain truth revealed by my mother-in-law. My name is Amy. I am 35 years old, working as a regular employee at a general company, living an ordinary life. 5 years have passed since I married Kevin. We had been living peaceful days without any major problems. However, suddenly a great trial appeared before us as a couple. This series of events was triggered by the recent death of my father-in-law. My father-in-law was a man of few words but gentle in nature, always caring for us as a couple. Thanks to him, I felt naturally integrated into my husband's family. That's why I couldn't accept his death. One evening, a little after his funeral, when things had calmed down, my husband suddenly started talking at dinner. "Hey, Amy, it's weird to talk about this all of a sudden, but is something wrong? Actually, I've been thinking about starting to financially support my parents' house from next month." "Support? Why would you do that?" "Since my father passed away, I think my mother is struggling on her own." "Wait a minute." I quickly interrupted my husband. "Your father's passing is sad, but your sister is living in your parents' house, right?" "Yes, that's right, but my husband has a sister living at home. She works for a prestigious company and earns much more than my husband." My father-in-law had also worked for a well-known company until his retirement. The retirement money should be with my mother-in-law. On the other hand, we, as a couple, work for small to medium-sized companies. Our income is probably lower than the average for our age group. In such a situation, I couldn't understand why we needed to send money to my mother-in-law. "Kevin, I don't think your mother and sister are struggling with money. So why send money?" When I asked this, an unbelievable answer came back. "Actually, it seems rich on the surface, but my mom has a considerable amount of debt." "What? My mother-in-law has such a huge debt." "Yes, it's hard to believe, but it's true. But you know, for some reason, she hasn't told my sister about the debt at all. That's why I brought up this idea to somehow help her." "But what about your father's retirement money?" "Actually, it seems that most of it went to his hospital bills, surgery costs, and funeral expenses. So now, my mom is really in a tough financial situation." "That's a really difficult situation." "Yes, it is. That's why I know I'm asking a lot, but I really want to help her." Seeing him bow his head deeply, I was torn. My mother-in-law had helped us, as a couple, many times before. While I was looking for my current job, she actively took over all the household chores in my stead and often came to cook dinner. Moreover, when my husband changed jobs and we were short of living expenses, she secretly gave him money. I was always full of gratitude for her kindness, and every time I thanked her, she returned with polite words of gratitude. Thanks to her support, we had overcome many difficulties. Now that she was in trouble, I couldn't just overlook it. Considering the favors we had received so far, I strongly felt the desire to help her. With those feelings, after a little hesitation, I eventually agreed to my husband's proposal. From that day, to support my mother-in-law financially, we became stricter about saving. We were not living luxuriously in the first place, but still, we simplified our meals even more and switched to cheaper items for daily use. My husband started working late every day and came home late at night more often. And then, an incident occurred during these days. Perhaps due to accumulated fatigue, I developed a fever and fell ill. When I was preparing to go to the hospital after calling in sick to work, my husband said, "Wait a minute, are you really going to the hospital?" "Yes, I am. Just a fever, isn't it? There's no need to go to the hospital for a mild fever, especially when we need to save money." What? I was surprised by his words, but managed to argue back. But what if it's a viral fever like the flu? We have fever reducers at home, right? Just take those and rest. You'll get better. Going to the hospital is a waste of money. That's not true. Listen to me. No matter what, don't go to the hospital. We're saving money, remember? After hearing those words, I had no choice but to rest at home, and ended up being bedridden for 3 days. Since then, my distress towards my husband gradually began to increase. Months later, to check on my mother-in-law's well-being, we visited my husband's parents' house. As I stepped into the living room, clothes and travel bags were scattered everywhere. Were you in the middle of sorting something out?" I asked, and my mother-in-law replied with a beaming smile. "Oh, actually, I'm going to Cancun this time." "A trip to Cancun?" "Yes, that's right. Sarah said she would come with me." "Amy, how about you? Do you want to come along?" "Really?" As I was surprised, my sister-in-law, Sarah, next to me started clapping her hands with joy, saying, "That's a great idea. Wait, what is this?" We've been sending them money, and they're happily planning a trip to Cancun. This can't be happening. Without noticing my speechlessness, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law continued to excitedly talk about the Cancun trip. "I'm so excited. It's my first time in Cancun," my mother-in-law said, and Sarah replied, "Me too. And it's surprisingly affordable this time of year." "Exactly, Amy. Don't worry. If you can come with us, we'll cover the travel expenses." My mother-in-law continued, "Really? We've been so grateful to you ever since Kevin got married," added Sarah. Unaware of my feelings, they were engrossed in their conversation. Finally reaching my limit, I confronted my smiling mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who were inviting me to the trip. "Stop joking. A trip abroad. What are you really thinking?" I raised my voice. "What?" Startled by my sudden reproach, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law froze with their mouths open. Even though they were shaken, they tried to calm me down. "Amy, what's wrong? Did we say something odd? Maybe you don't like traveling? Did we invite you too forcefully? It's not about that. How can you even think of inviting me on a trip? Do you understand our situation?" "Amy, calm down. What caused you to be so angry?" "Really, if you have the means to go on a trip, I'd rather you pay off your debts first." "What? Debts?" I let all my feelings out towards them. "We can hardly save money, and even when I'm sick, we can't afford to go to the hospital, yet we prioritize sending you money. And yet, how can you calmly plan a trip abroad? Please consider our situation a little." After pouring out all my emotions, I noticed tears streaming down my cheeks. Whether it was anger, sadness, or both, I wasn't sure. However, I was certain that the frugal lifestyle until now had been more painful than I thought. While crying, I collapsed on the spot. Seeing this, my husband rushed over in surprise. "Hey, you! What are you saying to my mom?" But, that's enough. We're going home." Kevin tried to pull me up forcefully. At that moment, my mother-in-law spoke up quietly. Wait a minute. What debts are you talking about? What? But didn't you have a huge debt? Surprised by my response, my mother-in-law's expression changed. There's no such thing. There's still my husband's pension and inheritance left. And I wouldn't be able to go on an overseas trip if I had debts. What? But in that instant, I realized the full picture of the situation. Anger welled up inside me. The reason why my husband's income didn't increase despite his daily overtime. Why I was the only one getting thinner and sick, despite the strict savings. And why my usually polite mother-in-law never thanked us for the money we sent. Then, I faced a shocking truth. The need for sending money, as my husband had been saying, was actually a fabrication. There was never a need to send them money. I could have gone to the doctor immediately when I got sick. I would have realized it if I had thought about it a bit more. Realizing this made the pointlessness of our past frugal life evident. But in our financially tight life, it had been hard to make a calm judgment. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law on the scene seemed to realize the truth behind my husband's words. They looked at Kevin with a doubtful gaze. Kevin, what's the meaning of this? Amy says she was sending money because you had debts. What's all this about? Kevin was clearly looking for an excuse. No, it's different. Actually, how is it different? Explain it clearly. Make us understand. Talk properly. Well, I could see that he was still trying to control the situation. My love for him had completely faded. I confronted my confused husband directly. What's all this about? There were no debts for your mother or sister. Where did all the money I gave you every month go? He began to mumble his words. Well, don't lie now. Tell me everything. The truth he revealed was something I found hard to accept. Actually, I was invited by a colleague and ended up going to nightclubs. You've been going to a nightclub? Yeah, well, how should I put it? I just got carried away without realizing it. I can't believe it. Going to such places when it hasn't been long since your father passed away. And that was around the time you started talking about sending money, right? I'm sorry, really sorry. I just went there for a bit of a change of pace. I didn't think it was a big deal. Such an excuse can't be accepted. How can you behave so irresponsibly? Lying about sending money and using my hard-earned money for going to nightclubs. I can never forgive that. No, it's not like that. I never meant to hurt you, Amy. I just got a bit carried away, that's all. I really regret it. As I shouted, my husband tried to appease me, piling up lies. But trust once lost, even between husband and wife, is not easily regained. His impromptu lies and insincere attitude completely extinguished my love for him. No matter how long his apologies continued, I couldn't forgive him in my heart. I couldn't bear it anymore. I felt it was impossible to continue living with someone who lied to satisfy his own desires. With despair welling up from the depths of my heart, I told my husband my final words. I'm fed up. Saying I didn't intend to hurt you is no joke at all. Not only did you deceive me with lies, but how much do you need to belittle me? While I had a fever, you forced me to save money and enjoyed yourself in nightclubs? Unbelievable. Sarah's voice of surprise echoed in the background as I continued indignantly. I've been saving hard for your dear mother. Food, daily necessities, clothing. I've been enduring it all. Do you understand that effort? I can't even think of you as a family anymore. Such a scumbag should just go to hell. Just wait. I only went to nightclubs. Just that? The drinks you enjoyed with the money saved while I was sick must have tasted great. No, it was for work. I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm leaving. Wait, Amy, please, I need you. What? Now? Have as much fun as you want in the nightclubs and see how it feels. Don't say that. By the way, I want all the money I gave you as support back. Make sure you pay it all back. Realizing the situation, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law hurriedly showed a posture of apology. Amy, I'm really sorry. I can't believe my foolish son did such a thing. It's truly shameful. Because of my thoughtless brother. Mother, Sarah, please don't apologize. It's not your fault. No, we have a responsibility too. We want to make amends somehow. Amy, I'm so sorry too. My brother has caused such trouble. Don't worry about it. But I've decided to divorce. I'm truly grateful to both of you, but please let me say goodbye. They nodded while shedding tears. Mother, Sarah, thank you for everything until now. At that moment, my husband called out to me with a pained voice. He knelt on the spot and continued to make excuses. Amy, please forgive me. I really regret what I've done until now. Before I could react, Sarah moved first and slapped my husband across the face. As he stood there stunned with a swollen cheek, Sarah looked down at him and said, I can't believe you would do something so terrible. How much more did you need to torment Amy? Sarah, lying to Amy to take the money meant for supporting the family, not allowing her to go to the hospital, and on top of that, spending that money at nightclubs. How can you be so heartless? I'm ashamed to be your sister. Wait, just hear me out. What's the point now? The fact that you've been forcing Amy to save and suffer for these past few months is true, isn't it? Mom and I will never forgive you. Never associate with us again. Do you understand? Don't ever show your face to us again. My sister-in-law, holding back tears, forcibly dragged my husband out and threw him outside. She locked the door and cut off all communication with my husband. No matter how much he pleaded at the entrance, the door was not opened. Amy, I'm really sorry. There's not much I can say now, but forget about that man and find happiness. With those words, I was hugged tightly by my sister-in-law. After expressing my gratitude, I left my in-laws' house. Then, I moved out of the house where I lived with my husband and found a new place near my workplace. Since I was already employed permanently, I didn't face much difficulty in living even after the divorce. I consulted a lawyer I knew to proceed with the divorce. It was clear that my husband was at fault, and the divorce was quickly finalized. I claimed the money he fraudulently took from me as support and the resulting compensation. I made sure to collect the maximum amount. He ended up having to pay the compensation in a lump sum and is now living days incomparably harder than before. I hear he is consumed with endless overtime and working through the night. Naturally, he no longer has time to frequent the nightclubs he used to enjoy. Now, he's just an existence who works. After the divorce, I received several messages from my ex-husband. I was wrong, forgive me. I'm not going to nightclubs anymore. I don't want to get back together. I'm just really in trouble. Can you lend me some money? Please, you're the only one I can rely on. In the end, it's all about money. I feel nothing but pity for him. Now that all the payments are finished, I'm thinking of blocking his contact. Meanwhile, I still keep in touch with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. They worry about me and have been in regular contact even after the divorce. Just the other day, seeing me having regained my spirits, my mother-in-law showed tears. Amy, I'm so happy to see you doing well. Mother, don't worry about me. I can live on my own strength. I always thought you'd be okay, Amy. But remember, you can always rely on me and Sarah if you need anything. Thank you so much. Let's go to Cancun together next time, just the three of us. Of course, I'm looking forward to it. If it weren't for the support of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I couldn't have overcome the trial of divorce. Since they always wish for my happiness, I vow to live my life with all my strength. I am afraid of the weekend coming. Life in the dream home has just begun. Currently, we are hosting a party every week at our home to welcome my in-laws. My wishes are not reflected, and my time for rest is being cut short. At the party, I am made to work as hands and feet for my in-laws. My spouse and I have been married for 3 years, working together. In the early days of our marriage, we lived in a 2-room rental apartment. Hey, shall we start building our own house soon? Yes, I also want to live in our own house. Buying a house was a big investment. I supported my husband, who is loose with money, and worked hard on saving and budgeting. Finally, we were able to see the possibility of buying our own house and started looking for a property. How's the property search going? There's so much to decide, nothing has been finalized yet. I spent my holidays on property searches, and fatigue accumulated. Hey, could you help out a bit? I can't, I have work. You're really not reliable. Oh, right. How about searching with my parents? Why? I don't want to bother your parents. It's fine. My parents are also concerned. What do you mean? Well, it's all right. It's all right. Although I was concerned about my husband's hesitant talk, honestly, I was not good at getting along with my in-laws and preferred to avoid spending time together. Despite this, contrary to my expectations, I was contacted by my in-laws right away. Hey, have you decided on the new house? I was thinking of asking a construction company run by my friend. No, we want to decide on the new house by ourselves. Despite my indirect refusal, a few days later, I heard from a contact about a very good piece of land. I heard the construction company hasn't contacted you. Did you make sure to contact them? Before I knew it, plans were underway to build a house on a piece of land I didn't know about, by a construction company I didn't even know. Actually, we want to decide everything by ourselves. Oh, my son said he wants us to take care of it. Make sure all the appliances are fully electric. The intervention by my in-laws became stronger day by day. I asked my husband to ask his parents to stop interfering. Why can't you accept my parents' suggestions? I want to hear your thoughts. It's noisy. Just take my parents' opinions as mine. How can you say that? Proposing to create a vegetable patch where the car is supposed to be parked or installing a pizza oven in the kitchen, are those really your ideas? After such exchanges, one day came just before the construction was to start. Please confirm the contents of this contract one more time. It was a call from the construction company we had commissioned to build the new house. Since I had thoroughly discussed it with the architect, I replied, yes, there's no problem. Is there any mistake? The person from the construction company continued somewhat reluctantly. I had heard it was for you and your spouse to live in. Yes, that's right. What about it? Then the person from the construction company shared a shocking fact. This design, it's almost like it's for a two-generation household. I felt a sensation of my head turning blank. That's not right. I don't know how the plan was carried out, but my in-laws had intervened without permission in the design I confirmed with the construction company, saying changes are necessary and had it altered. Moreover, they spoke as if I had agreed to those changes. The construction company was also perplexed, and I deeply apologize. Then farm tools were delivered to where the garage was supposed to be made, and it had been switched to a plan to start a home garden. This, too, was the work of my in-laws. The builder asked me, is it really okay to start construction? A few days later, a notice of unexpected furniture delivery was in the mailbox. It was cash on delivery, and again, this was the work of my in-laws. This was clearly overstepping. It was no longer possible to solve this through my husband. I reached my limit of patience and appealed directly to my in-laws. Father, mother, please stop acting on your own. Why is it bad? It's wrong for you to interfere in the house we will live in. What? Our house? Incredibly, it seemed my in-laws had assumed we would be living together. I hurriedly contacted my husband. Your parents have a big misunderstanding. What do you mean? They think they will live in our new house with us. Oh, that conversation. My heart chilled at my husband's calm reaction. I couldn't believe it. I think that's the best idea. What are you talking about? I haven't heard anything about this. Well, I'm telling you now. That should be enough. Unbelievable. I absolutely oppose it. Wait a minute. This is about my parents. Why do you oppose it? It seemed my husband had no doubts about living with his parents. On the other hand, he pressed as if to blame me for my opposition. Can't you, as a wife, get along with my parents? But the design was changed without my consent. Well, the elderly like to meddle. It's from goodwill. That's not possible. There's no trust between me, you, and your parents. We can build that trust from now on. The problem is now. I can't live with people I can't trust. You're being too sensitive. Then, we should cancel the new house plan. Stop the construction. Let's calm down. My firm opposition led to the cancellation of the plan to live with my in-laws. Doubts about my husband remained unresolved, and it seemed he was also dissatisfied with me. Amidst this, our new house was finally completed. I felt positive for the first time in a while about deepening our family bonds while cooperating with my husband in this house. On moving day, when we had settled the luggage, my husband broached an important topic. Now that we have our own house, I've started to feel the responsibility of being the head of the family. I see. I want you to listen. I want you, as my wife, to have that sense of responsibility too. Being a wife, isn't that a bit much? Hey, I'm being serious here. I felt a bit of discomfort at my husband's confident posture with his arms crossed. However, thinking it was good that he started to feel a sense of responsibility, I replied, yes, understood, but I would soon regret that decision. It was the weekend, and my husband called me on his way home. Tomorrow, I've invited some colleagues from work over. I need you to prepare for the party. What, tomorrow? Why so sudden? Why? Because it's tomorrow. You'll have time to prepare. But I have a hair salon appointment tomorrow. What are you talking about? Think about what's more important. My husband insisted. My parents will come over to help, so be thankful. What? It was the first weekend after moving into our new house. I was looking forward to changing the layout of the kitchen and living room, but my excitement vanished in an instant. Furthermore, those in-laws of mine were coming to help. I couldn't help but feel anxious. On the day of the home party, my in-laws arrived early in the morning. As I was busy with the food preparation, when I asked for their help, they said, "Oh, such plain dishes. At least order some finger food. I'll handle the ordering." Actually, the food is already prepared and we have finger food ready. We can't afford any more orders. What are you saying? Are you trying to shame your husband? Being stingy could affect your husband's promotion. What an understanding wife you are. Could you help with the party preparations instead? Sorry, I have a hair salon appointment. See you later. Make sure to set up the food properly when it arrives. Leaving those words behind, my in-laws went out after only making their demands known. My husband was still asleep in his room. Somehow, I managed to finish the party preparations in time. When I tried to get myself ready before the guests arrived. Look, this place is dirty. Hey, what's this dust in the entrance? Clean it properly. We're running low on beer, go buy more. Ordered around by my husband and in-laws, who had just gotten ready, I ended up welcoming the guests without even having time to put on makeup. Welcome, everyone. Please, this way. Now, serve the guests some drinks. Hurry up, will you? The party that day was the toughest for me. My stylish mother-in-law treated me like a servant. Without introducing me, when I greeted a few guests myself, they were puzzled by my appearance in a greasy apron without makeup. They probably thought I was a servant of the house, which was humiliating. Afterward, my husband started to host parties every weekend, and my in-laws never failed to visit. Colleagues from work, their families, and even neighbors were invited without prior consultation. My in-laws continued to play the glamorous hosts at the parties without offering any help, ordering me around. My husband adopted the same attitude as his parents. Initially, I complained to my husband. Please, let's not have parties every weekend. Why not? Everyone's having fun. I work too, and preparing for parties all weekend really wears me out. My parents are helping, aren't they? Helping? You call that helping? It's because you can't handle the guests that my parents are stepping in. All your parents do is eat and talk without preparing or cleaning up. What do you mean? There's no need to talk about my parents like that. But it's true. First of all, it's because you refuse to live with them that my parents have to come from far away. I sighed internally at this exchange. My husband always brought up the fact that I had refused to live with his parents whenever I objected to something. He continued to argue that since I had accepted his requests, I should also listen to his desires. Amidst the days spent without rest, I suddenly realized that I hadn't yet invited my own parents to our new house. So, I proposed, I want to skip the party this weekend and invite my parents over. What are you talking about? No, I object. Object. Do you even have the awareness of being a wife? You married into my family. And above all, don't belittle my parents. I'm not belittling anyone. Well, I don't mind you inviting them, but my parents come first. But your parents come every weekend, and because of the parties, I can never invite mine. How did it come to this? How much more does my husband expect me to sacrifice? Reaching this thought, I decided that I needed to consult someone about this situation. So, I called my mother and told her everything that had happened. I apologized tearfully for not being able to invite her to our new house. My mother was surprised but listened to me calmly. For now, come home this weekend, but I have to prepare for the party. You still haven't realized it, have you? Realized what? You're losing sight of yourself because of exhaustion. Awakened by my mother's words, I felt enlightened. And then my mother continued. I've come up with a plan, but I won't proceed if you're against it. Hearing the plan, I was taken aback. If executed, it would have a significant impact on my husband. I was left unsure whether to proceed. Talk to him one more time, then decide. My mother left the final decision up to me. I decided to talk to my husband again. Why are we back to this topic? Just invite your parents when mine aren't here. I interrupted my husband's words and made my position clear. Listen, this is your last chance. Not to plan home parties on his own. Of course, to get my consent for his parents' weekly visits too. And this time, to invite my parents. I conveyed these conditions, hoping my husband would accept them. Last chance, you're joking. I won't allow you or your parents to do as you please anymore. Listen, since you refuse to live with my parents, you should prioritize them. As usual, my husband started blaming me for lacking family awareness. Furthermore, he stated, a wife like you won't allow her family through our door. Never invite your parents, and if you're dissatisfied, leave. Realizing that arguing with him was futile, I had hoped patience would lead to his concession, but it was the opposite. Biting my lip, I conveyed my last hope, you'll regret this. However, he scoffed, I won't regret it, don't show your face to me again. With that, I left the house and spent some time at my parents' house. As time passed, I regained my composure. Following my husband had made me realize how brainwashed I had been. For my husband, it turned out that his self-esteem and vanity were more valuable than the concept of family. In his desire to appear admirable, he exploited our new house and his wife's role for selfish purposes. Afterward, I decided to listen to my mother's proposal. Several weeks had passed since I returned to my parents' home. My health had recovered. Since my workplace was close to my parents' home, my enthusiasm for work returned and I was living energetically. Yet, messages from my husband continued unabated, starting with I'll forgive you if, always from a position of superiority. He was always concerned about the preparations for the home parties. Lately, the gatherings we planned at our house were canceled. It's your fault. My position at work is getting worse because of this. How will you take responsibility? Think a little. I want you to fulfill your role as a wife at the important home parties. My husband was furious that I hadn't returned home, especially since he had a special home party planned for the end of the month. This party was to welcome important people from his workplace at our house, a highly prestigious event for him, supposedly ensuring his promotion if successful. On that special day, I, dressed up, headed to our home with my parents. My husband and in-laws were busy preparing to welcome the guests, managing the delivered food and drinks. My husband's bosses and colleagues were also present, and I exchanged greetings with them. "Oh, you look very charming in that dress." "Thank you." Seeing me, my husband and in-laws immediately approached with excitement. "Hey, what are you doing? Hurry up and help. What's with that outfit? What kind of wife are you, wandering around like that?" As my in-laws reached for the hem of my dress, my mother stepped forward from behind and clearly swatted their hands away. "Please don't touch the dress I designed with your greasy hands." "What is this? Who are you?" "Hey, that's my wife. You don't get to speak. It's unpleasant to be referred to in that manner towards my daughter." During this exchange, my husband's complexion rapidly changed. "You are what, daughter? You are the host of tonight's party, aren't you? Please show us around." "Oh, it was you who said we shouldn't cross the threshold of this house, right?" "Huh, what are you talking about? You said that?" Well, that." My husband's face turned from blue to red, changing like a traffic light. In fact, the guest of honor at today's gathering was my mother. My parents were executives in a major fashion industry company, and my husband's company had been planning to collaborate with the design department led by my mother for this fiscal year's business plan. Therefore, my husband suggested entertaining them with his proud home party. My mother, who operates under her maiden name, seemed unrecognized by my husband, although they had actually met before the marriage. Well, considering my husband's nature, he probably forgot. "Really, what kind of upbringing does your daughter have? Quick, to the kitchen. It's just right. Take your parents with you." "Stop it. This person is a special guest." "What?" My husband and in-laws were flustered and unsettled. My mother gave my husband a light glance, asking him to bring some drinks, please. Rushing to the kitchen, my husband returned with glasses. After checking the 2 glasses provided, she asked, "Could you also get one for my daughter?" Glancing at me, aware of his bosses and colleagues around, he brought a glass for me with his head down. I gracefully accepted it, giving my in-laws a firm look. "Could you also take care of the food?" What?" "Yes, understood. I'd like to sit down. Could you lend me a chair?" Yes, of course. Doesn't this seem like too few dishes?" Oh, does it? How about French? Shall we order some? Of course, the bill is on you." The budget is a bit. Oh dear, scrimping might affect your son's future, you know." While tilting my glass, I smiled warmly towards them. In fact, among those invited to today's party were individuals who had been acquainted with my mother from past visits to our house. And it seems they had relayed to my mother the cold treatment I received from my husband and in-laws at a previous home party. Dressed in a shabby apron, looking nothing like the lady of the house, I only realized she was your daughter when we exchanged greetings. She seemed very tired. My weakness had caused concern for my mother. Though I've regained my spirit now, that difficult period had weighed heavily on my heart. During the party, my mother kept my husband busy fetching drinks, continuously pointing out the work ethic of my in-laws, while my father deepened his acquaintance with people from my husband's workplace. After the party ended, I approached my husband. "Good work. Please, sign this." I handed him a divorce petition. Feeling humiliated by the day's events, my husband signed in a rage. Although my in-laws tried to stop him, my husband was resolute. "There, it's over. Don't ever show up in front of me again." Taking the divorce petition, I left my husband's house. Exiting the gate and looking back, I knew I would never return. Thus, I bid farewell to the dream home I once longed for. The house had changed my husband's character completely, and I had nearly lost myself in the process. My attachment to this house had already vanished. Leaving the home party behind felt liberating. Afterward, I focused on my work, trying to forget the unpleasant memories of the past. With the divorce, being freed from the mortgage payments of my husband's house and the expenses related to the parties, I found financial relief. I started a new life in a rented apartment, away from my parents' home. My ex-husband was transferred to another region by his company, seemingly seen as a liability in the business dealings involving my mother. Moving to a new place, my ex-husband could no longer live in the previous house. Burdened with the house's mortgage on his own, he sought support from his parents, who apparently refused. As a result, there's been tension between my ex-husband and his parents. What became of the house after I left is unknown to me. I've overcome past difficulties, decorating my new place to my liking, improving my cooking skills on weekends, and leading a fulfilling life. Occasionally, I invite my parents over and host small home parties with homemade dishes. In this way, I've been able to spend warm and wonderful times with my family. Moving forward, I plan to cherish my parents and live with gratitude for each happy day. I am Christina, 32 years old. I've been with Steve for 6 years already, and I love him dearly. I had always wanted to marry him and had proposed to him multiple times, but each time I was gently turned down. However, just recently, he finally accepted my 5th proposal. Nowadays, we are busy preparing for our wedding, thinking about wedding plans, and choosing outfits. But even amidst this busyness, every day is fun, and I find myself humming songs without even realizing it. Then one day, while feeling elated, a prenuptial agreement was placed in front of me. Steve had said that this contract was necessary as a condition for marriage. The content of the agreement was, what belongs to each of us before marriage stays as it is. We won't interfere with what the other inherits in the future. If the family situation changes, we'll update this document. I asked him while signing the document, "Steve, are you really concerned about this?" He replied, "Well, it's just for peace of mind, just in case. I think it's important for both of us." I was a bit puzzled as to why he was so insistent on this agreement, but I was more excited about the days ahead with him. However, a little incident was waiting. Steve has 2 somewhat eccentric older brothers. Before our wedding, when I met them, Steve advised, "Don't take what those 2 say at face value. They're a bit odd. Just take it lightly." In his words, my future parents-in-laws gave a slight, ambiguous smile. I hadn't seen them for a while, so I had almost forgotten about them. Then one day, while Steve was at work, I got an unexpected call from an unknown number. "You like fish, don't you, Chrissy?" I was completely taken aback by this sudden call from the brother-in-law I had only met once. "What? Who is this?" I recognized Chrissy as my nickname, but who was it? I was sure it wasn't a complete stranger since they called our home phone. As I was trying to figure it out, a voice came from the other end of the line. "Haha, you don't recognize me? I'm Steve's brother, your new elder brother." "What? Brother-in-law? Which one of?" "Steve has 2 brothers, but whose voice was this?" "It's been a while. What happened?" I asked, still somewhat confused. He said, "Actually, I went fishing today and caught a ton of salmon. I can't bring them all, but is it okay if I bring a few? Steve should love them with lemon." My heart raced with excitement at his words. I could make a dish that Steve loves. That's great news. Steve's working today, but I think he'll be really happy if he comes home to a delicious meal. I hung up the phone and hurried to the kitchen. I have lemon and seasoning. All right, let's make a delicious dish. As I was prepping the ingredients in high spirits, the doorbell rang. It must be my brother-in-law. When I checked the monitor, I recognized the face. Steve has 2 brothers, and it was the younger of the 2 who had arrived. When I opened the door, he seemed a bit flustered. "Sorry, can I use the bathroom? Also, could you cover the taxi fare?" Saying this, he dashed into the house. "Huh? Oh, okay," I replied as I handed money to the taxi driver. When he came out of the bathroom, he took a deep breath of relief. "Thanks for that. You saved me. Also, could you lend me a bit of money?" he asked with a smile, extending his hand. "Huh? Money? For what?" I looked at him, slightly puzzled, and he chuckled. "The fish isn't free. How about $50? He casually mentioned. "What?" I couldn't help but let out a surprised exclamation, nearly dropping my wallet. I had assumed that the fish was just a shared treat. Of course, I felt bad taking it for free and had planned to thank him with a slightly expensive snack. But $50, that was unexpected. Looking at my brother-in-law's expression, it seemed like this price was the norm for him. He had come all the way from far off to give it to me, and the fish was fresh. I didn't want to say anything that would ruin the mood. Reluctantly, with a slightly troubled look, I took $50 from my wallet and handed it to him. Thanks. The fish is in the cooler. Oh, and I'm leaving the fishing gear here too. I've asked Steve to bring it home later. See you. With that, he quickly left. Huh, you're leaving already? Wait, Kevin. Looking at the cooler and gear left at the entrance, I exclaimed in surprise. But he, waving a $50 bill, was gone in a flash. This is strange. Leaving the gear here. We don't have space for it. Oh, I forgot about the taxi fare. I remembered the taxi fare I had fronted for him and was deep in thought with a troubled face. I feel awkward asking Steve to carry this. And about the taxi fare. How do I bring it up? What surprised me even more was the contents of the cooler. Gathering my composure, I intended to prepare a dish. When I opened it, I exclaimed, What's this? On top of a lot of ice was a small salmon. And there was only one. I was so shocked that I was paralyzed. Wait, what's this? Unable to believe it, I was lost for words. From the way my brother-in-law talked, I had been looking forward to getting a lot of fish. I had cut some lemon in excitement. Seeing the lemon I had cut with excitement, all I could do was sigh. Several months later, I visited a small cafe nearby. I have something to discuss with you, but don't tell my younger brother. The hasty call was from my husband's elder brother. His tone gave off an urgent vibe. Listen, there's something important I have to discuss. But I can't tell my brother or my parents. He emphasized that repeatedly. Although a bit anxious, the designated cafe had a cozy and bright atmosphere, and it was daytime, so I thought it'd be fine. Christina, over here. As soon as I opened the door, he called out loudly. Embarrassed by the stares from other customers, I quickly walked to his table, looking down. Look, you're blushing. Christina, you're really cute. Grinning, my brother-in-law made my cheeks turn even redder. Please, can you be a bit quieter? When I whispered this, he waved his hand saying, okay. Then, turning to the woman seated next to him, he introduced me. This is my new girlfriend. A stylishly dressed, beautiful woman stood up and looked at me. Just as I was about to greet her, she shouted in a low voice, "What's this about?" And the next moment, I felt a slap on my cheek. Stunned, I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Did a stranger just slap me? Why? The furious woman in front of me shouted, "This is your new girlfriend? She's so annoying," and stormed out of the cafe. Wait, James. What kind of prank is this? My cheek hurts a bit. I was so shocked that my throat went dry. But my brother-in-law just casually said, "Actually, I had a fight with my girlfriend. I thought of replacing you as my new girlfriend and ending the relationship. Thanks to that, it's all over now," and he laughed. You're kidding, right? I never thought this would happen. I started to feel irritated by his nonchalant attitude. He waved his hand and said, "Well, these things happen. It's not a big deal. But this is the first time something like this has happened to me. How can I stay calm?" I raised my voice. Honestly, I was overwhelmed with anger, shock, and embarrassment. Then my brother-in-law said, "Don't be so mad. It's just a small thing." Everyone's surprised, but was it that shocking? Looking around, everyone was stealing glances at me. Feeling the gazes of the other customers, my cheeks burned with embarrassment. Out of embarrassment, I looked down. Taking the opportunity, my brother-in-law stood up with a smile and said, "See you later. Say hi to my brother for me," and left the store. Wait, I want to talk a bit more. I called out, but he was already out of sight, and my voice didn't reach him. I quickly stood up to chase after him. But the movement was halted by a staff member with a concerned look on their face. "I'm sorry, but can I have the check, please?" the staff said, handing me the check. The only thing that came to mind was, seriously. Recently, I've been having more issues with my in-laws, and I was thinking about keeping a distance from them in my heart. But with so many troubles in succession, I felt both helpless and angry. After sharing everything with my husband, we decided to ignore any contact from his brothers. If they needed anything, they would have to communicate through my husband, and after that, I decided to ignore the several messages I received. But it didn't last long, as there was a 60th birthday celebration for my in-laws, and I had to attend this heartwarming event. They have always been kind to me, and they weren't just important as my husband's parents, but also dear to me. Wow, it's spacious, and that detached room over there is lovely too. I heard my mother-in-law exclaim. Seeing her enjoy herself lifted my spirits. If I can choose a place for the celebration, I'd like this house. What the in-laws wanted was a traditional house that I recently inherited from my grandparents. That house is actually a 230-year-old traditional house that was relocated. It used to be lively when my grandparents lived there, I explained with nostalgia. My father-in-law also added, reminiscing, the first time I met my wife was also in such a traditional place. It turns out they met while touring old houses, enjoying tea together, and realized they were the same age. In fact, before my grandparents moved to a nursing home, this house was used as a traditional restaurant. Regretting not inviting them sooner, my mother-in-law comforted me, saying today was special and the place was perfect. At those words, my heart warmed a little. Seeing the house and garden, they were wandering around 2 hours before the party started. In the midst of this, the eldest brother came in noisily, showing slight dissatisfaction. Huh? What's this? Only Steve is here to greet us, and we're having lunch in such a quiet place? Surprising, the eldest brother exclaimed. Steve replied with a warm smile. This is a request from Mom and Dad. They wanted to spend family time in a cozy environment. And this lunch is a special version from a famous local shop. When Steve said that, I remembered how I had been looking forward to that lunch also. The second brother interjected with a concerned face. Even if it's special, lunch is still a lunch. Shouldn't we have ordered more luxurious food in such a beautiful house? Aren't you being too frugal, Steve? While it must have been expensive to rent the house, today was for my parents-in-laws, and I felt we should respect their wishes. Originally, I still haven't been reimbursed for the taxi fare when I was given just a small salmon, nor for the expenses at the shop where I had a commotion with his ex-girlfriend. But even after that, my eldest and second brothers continued to nag at Steve and me, occasionally cracking jokes. Through it all, Steve always maintained his usual calm and gentle demeanor. I really loved that about him. Amidst such a pleasant conversation, my eldest brother smiled and said, "Hey, I just thought of a good idea." I became a bit worried. His good ideas sometimes took unexpected turns. Steve looked at me with a slightly tense expression, possibly feeling the same way. After that, the eldest whispered something to the second brother, and they both started laughing with a gleam in their eyes. We're family, right? There's a way to make this special day even more special, the eldest said with a smile. Suddenly, the eldest brother looked at my husband and started speaking. Has this place already closed down? My husband replied gently with a surprised look. Yes, it has. Then, my brothers-in-law approached us with excitement. Wait a second, are you implying that you're the breadwinner here? The second brother said with a smile, and the eldest exclaimed, owning such a wonderful place and a big house. You're really lucky. Wait, are you misunderstanding something? My husband tilted his head in confusion, but my brothers-in-law continued. You can't keep this wonderful place all to yourself, the second brother said in a playful tone. Share it with us, aren't we brothers? The eldest chimed in, grinning. I understood their intentions and came up with a little idea. What do you want? I asked with a laugh. They looked at me, eyes shining, probably thinking of our family assets. But I couldn't simply comply with their demands. After all, this house was inherited by me, and it's not my husband's. My husband has always been supportive, especially when inheritance matters arose. He often reminded me, if there's any problem, consult me. Remember to manage our prenuptial agreement properly. Thinking about his warmth and sincerity made my brother-in-law's attitude even more displeasing. The second eldest brother said, "This place is in an absolutely perfect location, isn't it? Just a short walk and you can get anything you need. And this house, isn't it a bit too big?" In an exaggerated manner. To which the eldest responded, "Maybe we should let our younger brother's family live here. If you don't agree, we don't have to meet anymore." Taking a deep breath, I calmly replied, "It's fine." They were stunned. "Really? Can our younger brothers live here?" I answered with a smile, "Yes, of course. Not just for the second eldest brother, but you are also very welcome. I hope you all find the house to your liking. Here are the keys." When I handed over the keys, the expressions of the brothers-in-law instantly brightened up. "Really? We're so grateful." "Yes. Christina, thank you so much." The two of them happily wandered around the house, looking around. On the other hand, my husband spoke with a slightly worried look on his face. "Are you sure about this?" I took his hand. "Don't worry, I've thought it all through." A few days later, while relaxing in the living room, our intercom rang urgently. Opening the door, my brothers-in-law were visibly panicked. "Why is this happening?" "We didn't know the house was going to be demolished." They waved a notice of demolition in their hands. "Oh, that was planned," I calmly replied. They questioned in shock. "Why?" I explained. "A new apartment building is set to be constructed there. To do so, the existing house must be demolished." They stared at me, stunned. I further revealed the high-end restaurant has received relocation offers due to its prime location. I kept it unchanged because of a 60th birthday celebration, but today marks a significant change for it. They exchanged anxious glances. Noticing their surprise, I felt a bit satisfied. "Is the house really going to be demolished? Are you serious?" Smiling, I continued, "Yes, I am. So, you might want to retrieve any valuables soon. Everything inside will be discarded." Hearing this, their eyes widened even more. Observing the heavy machinery outside, I added, "Considering how active the construction site is, work might start soon. So, if you have valuable items, it's safer to take them now." After a moment of silence, they started discussing hastily. "Is this real? We gonna hurry?" Watching their frantic departure, I turned to my husband. "It seems they really didn't know," I remarked. My husband said with a warm smile, "Based on our previous experiences, I suppose my parents and I thought it would be good for them to get a little shock. But we might have inconvenienced the workers." It's true that I handed over the house keys to my brothers-in-law. I had properly informed both my husband and his parents about my intention and their plans to move into the new house. Of course, I also let them know that the house had been successfully purchased and the details of the handover date. It was up to them to decide if they will tell the brothers the truth or not. But it seems no one told them in the end. "Don't worry about the workers. I've already discussed it with them," he assured me. I had a feeling this might happen, so I had already informed the contractor. "I hope you regret it." We talked lightly and then went to sleep. The next day, "I can't believe it's come to this." Summoned to my in-laws' house, we were confronted by my mother-in-law's mitterings and my downtrodden brothers-in-law. "Even if the contractor didn't let you in, what were you thinking? Trying to sneak into the house in the middle of the night?" Well, you see, apparently after being turned away by the contractor during the day, they tried to sneak into the house at night to get their valuable items. A neighbor found this suspicious and called the police. "You not only failed to retrieve your belongings but also got stopped by the police," my husband said incredulously. But, well, while the brothers-in-law seemed eager to explain, their parents just sighed. "You both should apologize." My husband calmly offered advice to them, who didn't seem inclined to apologize. However, the eldest brother retorted with a hint of anger, "What? But this is all because of Christina." And the second brother chimed in, "I thought you were kind, but I was deceived. I was wondering why you gave me the keys so easily, but doing this to the house is quite a shock. Facing their sudden complaints, all I could do was smile. Brothers, it seems there's a misunderstanding. Actually, both the land and the house were inherited by me. We had discussed this even before my marriage to Steve. I've always maintained that what's mine is mine, and we even signed a contract on it. So, it's not your place to intervene. Really? Wait, a contract? While the brothers-in-law looked shocked, I decided to explain calmly. Since my grandparents' time, there have been various considerations about what to do with the land, but they always wanted to keep it as it is. They did tell me, however, that I could sell it in the future, and I consulted a trusted contractor about this. So, it's none of your business. But we're family. Why do you think it's not our concern? Before answering, I delved deep into my memories. I started thinking seriously about marriage about 3 years ago. My dad raised me with great care on his own because my mom passed away shortly after giving birth to me. Dad and I were close, like best friends, and we spent many times together, camping in summer, ski trips in winter. But those happy days ended suddenly when my father unexpectedly fell ill and passed away. I was overwhelmed, filled with regret for not being able to do anything for him and the emptiness of the room where his presence once was. During that time, my husband stood by me, supporting me during my father's funeral and subsequent memorial services. When I couldn't move from the room I shared with my father, my husband would make me homemade soup and listen to my stories about my father all night. I really want to marry you. You've always been on my side, always thinking about me. If you have something you don't like about me, I'll fix it. I told him during my 5th proposal. Then he looked troubled and said, I want to marry you, but there are issues with my family. I don't want to burden you with them. I truly love you, Steve, and I don't care about any problematic family. I reassured him, and we decided to get married. I absolutely have no regrets. I wanted to fulfill my grandparents' wishes, and I am satisfied that I did so. But Steve's brothers were a different story. I can't believe how presumptuous your brothers are. I can't forgive them anymore. They will pay for everything they've done. I declared firmly. Taxi fares, expensive food bills, compensation for slapping me, the cost of our tea at the cafe, utilities for the house, the expenses from calling the police, and everything else. Steve added, and his brothers turned pale. What? Even for that? That's unbelievable. Then, an even bigger surprise awaited them. Their father announced, You're disowned. What? Please don't, Dad. Afterwards, the brothers were kicked out of their parents' house. Their problematic behavior became known even to distant relatives. Having lost their place, the brothers were abandoned by their girlfriends and families. Now, they seem to live quietly in a small apartment. Is this our new home? Can we really live here without any issues? In a luxurious high-rise condo, we became neighbors with Steve's parents. Of course, as a condition for relinquishing the land, we agreed to buy this floor in the building. I'm happy that we can live close like this. Parts of my grandparents' old house, like its pillars, were incorporated into our new home. We took new photos as a family. Let's display this photo alongside the old ones. The photo captured the happy faces of my family. From now on, I thought to myself, I'll cherish the smiles of this family. Can you go back to your parents' home? My parents are going to live in this house. What are you talking about? I don't understand. I truly didn't understand what my husband meant. Even though I contribute $2,000 for monthly living expenses, what will he do without me? However, this turned out to be a good thing for me. The next day, I quickly contacted a recycling company. If my husband was plotting something, I had my ways too. What do you think you're doing? Huh? It's none of your business how I dispose of my own belongings, right? I am Liana, a 32-year-old office worker. I married Danny, my husband, quite recently. We met at a group dating event. He approached me aggressively, and I gradually became attracted to him, which led to us dating. Our relationship went smoothly for about 2 years, and then he proposed to me. As I was in my early 30s and hoping to marry, I was very happy when he proposed. I immediately said yes, and we decided to get married. Then we quickly planned to greet each other's parents. When I introduced him to my parents, they were relieved to see he was a decent office worker. Please take good care of our daughter. Yes, I will definitely make her happy. I was happy when he said that confidently. He was fun and considerate, so I thought our married life would be enjoyable. After that, we went to greet his parents. I don't want to remember much about that day. Right from the introduction, his parents didn't seem impressed. Nice to meet you. I'm Liana. Danny, welcome back. It must have been tough walking in the heat, right? I have some cold drinks prepared. Sit down and drink. Oh, I didn't realize you brought a friend, haha. Mom, I brought Liana, my fiancé, today. Oh, sorry, haha. You're so lucky to marry Danny. His mother suddenly said that. Ignoring my greeting at our first meeting, I wondered if she was making fun of me. Then we were led to the living room, and I greeted his father, but he didn't respond at all, just talking to Danny. Without mentioning our marriage, they talked about family matters only they understood for over an hour, leaving me out of the conversation. So, I ended up leaving without having much conversation with his parents. Since his parents were so cold, I asked Danny if he had told them about our intention to get married. I did, he said, but their attitude was too unfriendly. I felt really uncomfortable. That's why I didn't want a meeting between both of our families. Feeling very anxious, I eventually arranged one. I had already warned my parents about his parents. Thanks to that, my parents managed the conversation well. His parents were still unfriendly, but my parents asked questions that drew them out, praising their answers, which seemed to put them in a better mood, and they became more talkative. As a result, the first meeting over a meal ended pleasantly, and I felt relieved. I was truly grateful to my parents for trying so hard for their daughter. Later on, we had our wedding without any issues and finished our honeymoon, starting our life together. We submitted our marriage registration, and we officially became husband and wife. Then, our married life began. Even the trivial things in married life felt enjoyable. Since we hadn't lived together before marriage, everything was fresh. I felt enveloped in happiness every day. I'm home. Welcome back. I made dinner. Oh, what's on the menu today? It's your favorite, Danny. It's steak. Steak. Awesome. I'll get changed and come right away. We enjoyed our married life every day. Although both of us were working, Danny sometimes cooks simple meals, which I appreciated. I had often heard that wives usually bear the brunt of household chores after marriage, but thankfully, that wasn't the case for me. I felt really glad to have married him. That was how we were living a happy married life. However, about a year after marriage, Danny's attitude changed drastically and became cold. At first, I didn't notice, but our conversations began to dwindle. Today, something happened at work. Are you listening to me? I guess so. What kind of response is that? Indeed, Danny completely ignored my stories, and our conversations gradually faded. During meals, he hardly spoke, and the silence grew. Then, perhaps frustrated with this situation, Danny started working overtime more often and returned home considerably late. He also began to go out for drinks more often, coming home drunk. I couldn't understand why our relationship had suddenly deteriorated. Had I done something to upset Danny? Or had his feelings for me cooled off just after a year? Thus, my days were filled with anxiety and confusion. Danny was coming home late, and we hardly had any proper conversations. I wondered if our relationship would continue to deteriorate and lead to divorce. Amidst these thoughts, one day, he suddenly said to me, "Hey, how about we go out to eat somewhere today?" What happened all of a sudden? No, I was just thinking we haven't really had a good talk recently. Work has been busy, and I've been feeling down. Sorry for being cold. Danny apologized like that. It's okay. Well, I was quite worried, but I forgive you since you apologized. Thank you. I'll be more careful from now on. I was happy that Danny apologized. If things had remained in a bad state, we might have ended up divorcing. That day, we went to a restaurant and enjoyed delicious food and drinks. We had a great time talking about various things, just like before we were married. I thought we might be able to enjoy a happy married life like before. After that, Danny started valuing our time together, and it felt like we went back to our old days. He came home early, and our conversations during meals were enjoyable. So, I was completely reassured. In the midst of those days, Danny made a suggestion. There's a new apartment building coming up that seems convenient for commuting and has a lovely interior. How about moving there? He said that and showed me the brochure for the property. Indeed, it was a very nice place, as Danny described. At that time, we lived in the apartment I used to live in alone. The commute from the apartment was all right, and it was spacious enough for two. Our home appliances were relatively new, so we decided to start our married life in this apartment. However, now that it's been about a year and a half since we got married, it might be time to consider moving, especially if we plan to have a family in the future. The rent for the apartment Danny suggested is $1,400 per month. It's quite expensive, but if we each contribute $700 and save on groceries, we should be able to afford it. I agreed with Danny's proposal and hurried the contract procedures. A few months later, we moved into the completed apartment. It was spacious with many rooms, beautiful, and seemed very comfortable to live in. Danny really liked it and seemed satisfied. It was an extremely comfortable and pleasant place. Equipped with a complete kitchen, I could enjoy cooking every day. Danny and I were spending joyful time together in our new home. However, about a month later, something bothered me. Hey Danny, about this month's rent, your part hasn't been deposited into our joint account, right? Really? Oh, I thought I had transferred it. There's a deadline for payment, so please transfer it soon. Sorry, I thought I had already transferred it and ended up spending on other things. Can you cover this month for me? I'll pay it back soon, sorry. Please make it quick. I paid the full rent from my salary then. It was the first time I saw Danny not keeping such a promise, so I thought he would pay me back soon. However, after 2, then 3 weeks passed. Danny still hadn't paid me back, and it was already time for the next rent payment. Hey, you haven't paid me back for last month's rent yet. Do I have to pay the full $1,400 this month? That's unreasonable. But we agreed to split the rent each month. Well, we made a promise, but it's not easy, right? No, it's a promise, so don't make excuses and just keep it. I'm working hard every day, so don't be so harsh. Working hard? If he was working hard, he should cooperate in paying the rent for us as a couple. Then, can you set aside the rent from your salary in advance? All right. I wonder if he really understood. My trust in Danny dropped significantly. Besides, I was paying for all living expenses, including food and utilities. I was saving as much as possible. So even with rent, the total came to about $2,000, but it's hard to pay all that with just my salary. However, Danny never paid the rent again. It turned out he only paid for the first month after we moved. One day, something unforgivable happened. It was on my holiday when Danny was out for work, and I was cleaning the house. As I was vacuuming around the house, I found something in Danny's room. Did he have luxury brand clothes? Danny had bought luxury brand clothes without my knowledge. Clothes he had never worn in front of me. So, I didn't even know he had bought them. But what upset me the most was that he bought such expensive items while not paying the rent or living expenses. As soon as Danny came home, I confronted him. Hey, what is this? It's my clothes. What's the problem? Why are you buying luxury brand clothes? Why not? I can buy whatever I want with my salary. Yes, you can. But you said we would share expenses like rent and groceries, and you haven't paid. When will you pay? I'll pay when I can. Isn't your priority wrong? If you can afford luxury clothes, then pay the rent. Danny retorted to my words. What's the problem? It's fine, isn't it? To me, these clothes are more important. Your salary is also part of our income, so you paying the entire rent is the same as us paying it together. I was amazed at how self-centered his statement was. It's not the same. I'm making an effort to save while you just buy whatever you want. Don't you care about our home? Danny and I had a big fight for the first time in a while. He stormed out of the house in rage. Maybe we both needed some time to cool down. After Danny left, I searched his room again. I found a receipt for a luxury brand bag for women in his desk drawer. The date was over a month ago. I had no memory of being given such a bag, and my birthday had passed 2 months before. At that time, we only enjoyed a meal at a slightly upscale restaurant. Moreover, I paid for it. I haven't received anything from Danny. I finally understood. Danny was probably giving gifts to another woman. That's why he didn't pay the rent and didn't contribute to living expenses. So, I hired a detective agency. About 3 days later, Danny returned home as if nothing had happened. However, I couldn't greet him as I used to. I didn't say welcome back or talk to him. Danny, sensing my anger, didn't try to start a conversation either. In my mind, I was thinking of ending our marriage depending on the results from the detective agency. About 2 weeks later, I received the results from the agency. As expected, Danny was having an affair. Moreover, the other woman was his former girlfriend. Before marriage, he mentioned having a long-term relationship with a woman, and it seemed she was the one he was having an affair with. The affair matched the period last year when Danny became cold toward me. He had been cheating since then. I was filled with rage. The sudden kindness from Danny, who had been cold, was probably to make me bear all household expenses, allowing him to freely spend his salary, pretending our marriage was good. I was skillfully used by him. This was something I couldn't forgive. I decided to take revenge on him. In the midst of this, Danny came home from work and made an unbelievable proposal. My parents are going to live in this house, so can you go back to your parents' home? What are you talking about? I don't understand. After our fight, I went back to my parents' house, and they told me to break up with such a woman. They said they were moving to this apartment and suggested we live together. So, I've decided to live here with my parents and you need to move out. I couldn't believe what Danny was saying. Even though I contribute $2,000 for monthly living expenses, what will he do without me? However, this turned out to be a good thing for me. Understood? Perhaps our relationship can't be repaired. If that's the case, I'll leave. When I said that, Danny laughed happily and said, "I'll come back after you leave," and left. The next day, I quickly contacted a recycling company. Since he was plotting something, I had my ways too. A few days later, I had the recycling company assess all the furniture and appliances and sold everything. It turned out to be an unexpected windfall of hundreds of dollars. Then, I packed my belongings and went back to my parents' house. Danny had prepared a divorce form, so I signed it and submitted it to the city office promptly. This meant Danny and I would then lead completely separate lives. When I told Danny the moving out was done, he said cheerfully, "Oh, that was fast. Let's both be happy," and hung up. However, a few days later, Danny called me again. "Hey, what do you mean by this? We're already divorced. Do you need something? Where did all the furniture and appliances go? You can't just take them. It's my right to do whatever I want with my belongings, isn't it? All the furniture and appliances in the house are what I've been using since my single days. I've already had them taken away by the recycling company. So, I have to buy new ones then. Do you have that kind of money? You're kidding me. I work too, you know? Well, but that apartment costs $1,400 per month in rent, right? Plus, living expenses for 3 adults will be around $2,200 to $2,300 a month. It costs that much. Yes, I've been paying about that much all along. I can afford that with my salary. Maybe. Well, no more money for your girlfriend then. What? I know everything about your affair with your ex-girlfriend. I'll be claiming compensation for that, so be prepared. I'll contact you through a lawyer. Bye. Wait a minute. I hung up without listening to him. Afterward, through a lawyer, I proceeded with the process of claiming compensation from Danny and his affair partner. Danny was ordered to pay a compensation of $30,000, but ended up in debt as he had no savings. As expected, he soon found it difficult to pay the living expenses and rent, and it seemed he had to leave the apartment. His parents' house had already been sold, so they had no place to return to and are now living in a small, cheap apartment as a family of 3. When I was contributing financially, there was a sense of economic ease. But after the divorce, Danny was left with nothing, and his relationship with his affair partner couldn't be maintained. As a result, it seems our relationship naturally came to an end. Danny begged me for reconciliation, crying, but I ignored everything and even blocked his calls. The compensation is to be paid in installments, and if the payments are delayed, his salary might be garnished, so it's unlikely he will miss any payments. Meanwhile, I plan to commute from my parents' house and start saving the money I couldn't save before. The marriage was a failure, but I take it as a lesson and intend to use this experience in my future life. Hey, where are you now? I'm at the office, working. His response was surprisingly calm, which caught me off guard. He's right next to me now. I can't believe he fooled me so easily. If he's going to play it that way, I'll have to come up with a plan. I'll use whatever means necessary to make him realize. My name is Jane. I'm 33 years old this year. I graduated from college and joined a major foreign company I had dreamed of for a long time. I had no complaints about my income, but my days were busy, and I often had to travel abroad. I feared that if this lifestyle continued, every day would be consumed by work. When I turned 29, I began to feel a sense of urgency and anxiety about the future, wanting a break from my daily routine. At that time, a friend suddenly invited me to a group date, and I thought it would be a perfect distraction. There, I met Kyle, who would later become my husband. He was the same age as me, 29, and at first glance seemed like an ordinary office worker living his daily life. While I had business trips and relocations, Kyle had no such duties, and his salary was indeed lower than mine. One day, as our relationship approached its first year and we began to seriously consider marriage, Kyle said to me with a slightly gloomy face, "Honestly, I'm worried if I can make you happy as things stand." "Why do you think that?" "When it comes to salary, I earn less than you, and I'm unsure if I can adequately support our family as a man." I took his hand and said, "I'm with you not because of your salary or status, but because I genuinely love you. That's all there is to it." A look of relief appeared on his anxious face. At that moment, I felt even more affection for him. I expressed the emotions swelling up inside me. "I need you, Kyle. It's you that I want, not anyone else." He looked surprised for a moment, then gently said, "Jane, thank you for saying that. I truly want to spend my life with you." A month later, he proposed to me. As autumn deepened, we got married in a chapel, surrounded by blessings from everyone. My life continued to be busy with work as before, but having him in my life made everything felt worth it. Fast forward 2 years from that special day. We spent our time peacefully and happily. Time flew, and thoughts about having children began to cross our minds. One evening after work, I returned home to find that Kyle, who usually waited for me, wasn't there. "That's odd. Where's Kyle?" I checked the living room, bedroom, and other rooms, but he was nowhere to be found. Returning to the entrance, I noticed his shoes were missing. I quickly checked my phone, but there were no messenger notifications or any particular calls. This was strange. Kyle usually got home before me. He would always let me know if something came up. I wondered, did something serious happen to him? Suppressing my anxiety, I picked up my phone to call him. After a few anxious seconds, I heard his nonchalant voice. "Hey, what's up? Kyle, where are you? Are you okay?" "Huh? Oh, I'm fine. Did something happen? I came home and you weren't here. There were no messages, so I was worried something had happened. Oh, about that. Sorry, I'm actually working overtime today. Really? But you've hardly ever done that before, right? Feeling something was off, I pressed for more details. He hesitated briefly, then began to speak more quickly than usual. Well, I've been given a huge responsibility at work. If I do well, there might be talk of a promotion. So I'm working hard. Really? That's great news, Kyle. Thanks. But because of this, I might have to work overtime more frequently for a while. Sorry about that. I'm still working, so I'll talk to you later. Wait, you're hanging up already? He abruptly ended the call. I was initially irritated, but the news of a potential promotion truly made me happy. I hoped that this promotion might resolve the income concerns Kyle had been having at the back of his mind. While I wasn't particularly concerned about Kyle's income, I knew he was driven to succeed on his own terms. It looked certain that our future together would become even more enjoyable. Considering the prospect of having children, this promotion was indeed a blessing. From the day we had that conversation over the phone, it became truly rare for him to come home on time. On holidays, he would say, "I need to go to work for a bit," and leave the house. The time we would spend together as a couple started to diminish day by day. When I came home from work, I hoped to see him relaxing in the living room, but the house was silent and he was nowhere to be found. Even on holidays, Kyle seemed busy, and we couldn't find time to relax together. I understood he was working hard and he mentioned there's a chance for a promotion, so I supported him. But to be honest, there were times I wanted to tell him, shouldn't we take some time for ourselves once in a while? But I couldn't, as I didn't want to pressure him. I immersed myself in my work to distract myself from the loneliness. I also had an opportunity to go on an overseas business trip at just the right time, so I dived into it wholeheartedly. However, our lives began to drift apart, and I started to feel, deep down, I wish we had more time together. Despite understanding the pressure he was under, I decided to share my feelings. "Kyle, can you listen for a moment?" When he came home, I approached him with a bit of nervousness. "Now? I'm kind of tired." "Oh, I see." His response wasn't what I expected, and I was unsure of how to react. But feeling that I needed to speak up, I tried again. "Sorry, Kyle. I understand you're probably tired, but there's something I wanted to talk about today." All right. But can you be quick? I have to get up early tomorrow." "But tomorrow is Saturday, right? Why do you have to be up early? Do you really need to talk about this now?" The tone of his voice rose, and I was taken aback, just because I could see his face turning red with anger. It was the first time I saw him like this, and I was scared. "Forget it. I'm going to bed," he said and went straight to the bedroom. I stood there, not knowing what to do. Kyle's reaction was truly shocking. He had never been so cold to me before. I always believed that even in busy times, we could communicate properly as a couple. I never imagined being yelled at for something so minor. Usually, we would discuss things calmly and solve them. But this time, he was different. To be honest, I was scared to confront him with my emotions. Soon after, I had an overseas business trip, and my fatigue from work was at its peak. On top of that, my train home was delayed. I was thinking about the bad timing, but I wanted to get home quickly. Maybe Kyle is already back home, I thought, so I hailed a taxi. "Excuse me, please take me to this address." While in the taxi, I was too tired to check my phone. I was staring out of the window when, "Wait, stop here," I exclaimed. I squinted and looked again. There was no mistake. Walking there were Kyle and a woman I didn't recognize. That's Kyle, right? He said he was busy with work, right? So why is he here and with that woman? Questions swirled in my mind. Everything about our daily life, our married life, and his actions felt suspicious all of a sudden. It wasn't just a case of mistaken identity or someone looking similar. The way he walked, his posture, and that distinctive jacket, it was unmistakably Kyle. What shocked me more was when they suddenly started kissing as if they weren't concerned about anyone watching. In my shock, I managed to take out my phone and record the scene, thinking it might serve as evidence. They continued walking, hands clasped, looking cheerful. I just stared blankly at their retreating figures. As I recorded, the taxi driver asked, "Are you okay?" Hearing his voice, I snapped back to reality and quickly stopped the recording. When I got home, as expected, there were no signs of Kyle. Amidst the turmoil of emotions, I decided to call him. After several rings, I finally heard his voice. "What is it? You're calling so much. I'm at work right now. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify something. I'm a bit busy right now." "What? Busy? Do you mean you're busy with another woman?" I mustered the courage to confront him. "What are you talking about?" He responded in a surprised yet stern tone. After a moment of silence, he spoke in an annoyed voice. "I can't believe you're doubting me. I'm staying at the office tonight." And with that, he suddenly hung up the phone. Kyle's behavior couldn't be described as anything but suspicious. Could he really be cheating? The mere thought felt surreal. Considering our future as a couple, it had become evident that we needed a deep conversation to truly understand each other's feelings. But given his recent behavior, finding the right moment seemed difficult. True to his words, he didn't come back home that night. The next day, he came home but didn't speak much, as if he was a different person. Amidst this, the 2-week overseas business trip I had scheduled arrived. On the morning of departure, while pondering what to say to Kyle, he surprisingly woke up early and started a somewhat awkward conversation. "Jane, it's going to be tough with your trip starting today, but do your best." "Ah, thanks, Kyle. Let's both be careful. Thinking about you being gone for 2 weeks makes me lonely. I've gotten used to the occasional trips, but they still make me sentimental." "You really think that way?" I'm a bit surprised. Of course, I've felt a strange tension between us lately. When you come back, let's go on a fun date and change our mood. Did he truly feel this way? Or were these words a mask to hide a secret I didn't know? He might be trying to divert my suspicions. Even though my head understood this possibility, a part of my heart was relieved by his words. Our relationship had cooled off recently, and my passion for him seemed to have diminished. Yet deep down, maybe I wasn't ready to let him go. Was that scene I witnessed just a figment of my imagination? Seeing his smile again made all the doubts vanish, and I realized how much I still loved him. "Let's try to truly understand each other when I get back." With a cheerful response, I proceeded with my departure preparations. Surprisingly, the business trip went smoothly and ended earlier than planned. Initially, I thought of informing him about my early return. However, an idea struck me: a surprise return could be fun. I imagined greeting a tired Kyle with a homemade dinner. I was looking forward to the small pleasure of welcoming him back, tired from his day, with the dinner I had prepared. Upon landing in the US, it felt like I had been away for longer than just a week. Standing in front of my house, I whispered to myself, "I'm finally back." But as I opened the door, something felt out of place. There, right in front of me, were unfamiliar pink high heels. Frozen in surprise, I heard Kyle's voice, along with a woman's giggly voice from the living room. "What?" Holding back my anxiety, I tiptoed down the corridor. Peeking into the living room, I saw that same woman I had seen before, laughing and sharing wine with Kyle. The woman, speaking in a playful tone, said, "Is it okay to stay here? What if someone finds out about us?" "It's fine. She won't be back for another 2 days. Haha. Really? Spending my birthday alone with you like this? I'm so lucky." "I know, right? Haha. So, will you stay with me tonight?" "Oh, Kyle, thank you for this present, too." The woman's name appeared to be Lisa. They seemed intoxicated, holding hands and laughing joyfully. My heart felt like it was tearing apart. How could this happen so easily in this house which I had worked so hard to obtain? Tears welled up, but I thought I shouldn't cry here and took a picture of the scene with my smartphone. While they seemed entirely relaxed, I quietly left the house and boarded the elevator. Inside the elevator, my heart raced. Torn between wanting to trust Kyle and the reality I had just witnessed, the memories of our good times together raced through my mind. I didn't want to believe it, but the reality before me couldn't be denied. Even in this situation, could I still maintain my relationship with him? Suppressing the tightening feeling in my chest, I decided to call him. When he answered the phone with a hello, I paused for a moment before speaking. "Hey, where are you right now?" He responded casually, "I told you, I'm at work. Is something wrong?" "Well, there's something that's bothering me. Is someone at our place right now?" He sounded puzzled as he murmured, "Huh?" I continued, slightly exasperated but wanting to address the situation. "I came back home early. As I approached the house, I heard voices inside. Wait, seriously? You mean you're standing outside our door right now?" "Yes, so I was thinking if I should go in and check." As I tried to gauge his response, what he said next was completely unexpected, and I was shocked. "What? Could it be a burglar?" "That's it, a burglar. Jane, stay away for now. It's dangerous." I was utterly disappointed at that moment. I couldn't believe he would try to deceive me with such a flimsy excuse like this. First, go somewhere safe. Then the call abruptly ended. I impulsively called the police. "Excuse me, I believe there might be a burglar in my home. I can hear voices. Could you come quickly?" Shortly after, 2 police officers arrived at my home. I explained the situation and we entered the house together. When the house intercom rang and he appeared, he looked shocked. "Why are the police here? Was there some trouble? Are you a resident here?" "Yes, I am, but we received a report from the lady here saying someone had broken into the house." "What? A burglar? But there's nobody here." At that moment, I revealed myself from a corner, staring at his astonished face. "Why?" He looked completely bewildered. I apologized to the officers, saying, "Sorry, it was a misunderstanding," and sent them on their way. There was no sign of a woman inside the apartment. She probably slipped out while I was making the call. He looked slightly uneasy, seemingly trying to hide his infidelity. Kyle raised his voice. "Why did you suddenly call the police? Isn't that an overreaction?" "Well, you're the one who mentioned it might be a burglar, right? And where were you, really?" He looked troubled, clearly unsure of what to say. "Well, actually, I took out my smartphone and played the video I had recorded earlier. Do you see this?" His face went completely pale, and he seemed at a loss for words. "What is this? Can you explain?" I said with a slight smile. He seemed to be searching for words. I don't need excuses. Just tell me the truth." Although there was remorse in his eyes, he still couldn't muster the words to apologize to me. At this point, it doesn't matter. Even in a situation like this, you can't even apologize properly. How does it feel to be caught cheating? I'm sorry, Jane. What's the use of apologizing now? Just saying sorry won't fix everything, right? A mere apology won't heal this pain. Don't worry, I'll be sure to get compensation from you. Both you and that woman better take responsibility. With those words, my anger didn't subside and I threw him out of the house. After returning inside, I made sure to lock the door tightly. For a while, I could hear his voice and footsteps outside, but they eventually faded. Later on, I received a concerned call from his parents. Our son came home very distressed. "What happened?" When I calmly explained the situation, they were shocked and promised to cooperate regarding the compensation and divorce matters. They even prepared the divorce papers for me. The divorce went smoothly, and when I informed my in-laws, they told me they had decided to disown their son. I decided to claim damages from him and his affair partner and contacted my trusted lawyer. I learned that the woman he cheated with worked at the front desk of his company. And soon enough, the gossip spread throughout the office. Unable to handle the pressure, she ended up quitting her job. I heard that Kyle was still working there, facing cold stares and whispers almost daily. Surprisingly, I learned that the promotion he had been talking about all along was a lie. Thinking back, I might have been a bit too oblivious back then. But now, I feel like I'm on a new path. I plan to focus on my work and aim for a better future. There were many happy times in my marriage, but marriage isn't the only thing in life. I look forward to enjoying my future days, discovering a new me. At long last, the day has come when I don't have to see your face anymore. Freeloaders who just eat without working should get out. You should be thankful for being allowed to be a freeloader all this time. Understood. I won't come back. Thank you for everything up to now. I quickly packed what I needed and left my in-laws' place, where I had been living for many years. My mother-in-law looked very pleased as she watched me leave. However, only I know a certain sad truth. I know what's going to happen to this house. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old and I work from home. I've been married to my husband Alan for 5 years. We had a peaceful life as a couple, but things changed in our fourth year of marriage. My normally healthy father-in-law suddenly became ill and needed care. That's how we started living with my in-laws. I didn't agree with the idea of living with them so soon, but my husband is an only child, with no other family for my in-laws to rely on. We ended up taking care of my father-in-law. I thought about quitting my job if it were necessary for his care, but based on my past performance, my company allowed me to continue working remotely. Trouble with my in-laws started right away. Yes, I experienced the so-called mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problem too. Sarah, hurry up and take care of the cooking and cleaning. How long are you going to be lazy and avoid your housework? Mother-in-law, I'm working right now. What are you talking about? You're always just clicking away on the computer. The truth is, you're just browsing the internet, not really working, right? Thinking that using the computer equates to playing around on the internet is so outdated. I have permission to work from home from my company. In between the household chores and caring for my father-in-law, I've used my skills to get back to the salary I was earning before. And after about 3 months of hard work, when I finally managed to bring my salary back to the amount before, I felt a real sense of joy. As for the reason that I worked so hard, the truth is, Alan's salary isn't enough for us to make ends meet. I had thought that life was finally going to get easier. I even thought about starting to put money away. But for some reason, things just kept getting harder. It felt like the contents of my wallet just kept dwindling. Suspicious, I looked into where the money was going and found out that Alan had been spending a lot. I also learned that my mother-in-law was terribly wasteful with money. Alan has always been a people pleaser, often treating his juniors at work to lunch. But lately, it seems that he's also been using our credit cards to treat people to drinking parties as well. It doesn't matter how much I earn. If Alan uses more than that, our finances will inevitably dwindle. As for my mother-in-law, she's balancing multiple hobbies with her friends, generously paying the lesson fees and socializing afterwards. I can't stand the fact that my husband and mother-in-law continue their wasteful spending, leaving all the housework and care for my father-in-law up to me. I've ended up having to cover all our living expenses with my income, making saving money a dream. Feeling anxious about this problem, I decided to talk to my husband and mother-in-law. Ellen and mother-in-law, it seems like we've been spending quite a lot lately. If this continues, we'll run out of money. Could you please try to cut back on your expenses? Ellen and my mother-in-law reacted harshly to my words. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be seen as stingy in front of my colleagues and subordinates. You can understand that, right? They won't think you're stingy just because there are times where you don't pay for them. There's no need to treat them every single time. You don't seem to understand, but for work to go smoothly, you have to keep good relationships with your coworkers. Treating your juniors to lunch is one thing, but what about the trips to the girls' bars? That has nothing to do with work, right? You just want to have fun, don't you? How did you? You come home drunk and start talking about it even if no one asks you. That just means he has a more enjoyable time there than spending time with you. I'm glad that mom understands. And she's right, laughs. And as for me, if I didn't go to my classes, I'd just be cooped up at home. I'm taking classes with my friends to enjoy the limited time I have left in this world. What a terrible daughter-in-law I have. All you do is the housework, and you don't earn anything, so you have no right to complain. Really though, what is she thinking? A homemaker looking down on us from her high horse. I am telling you, I am working. I'm earning a steady income and contributing to this household. I'm also doing housework and taking care of father-in-law. Don't lie. Working from home, you can't be earning that much. Mother is the one doing the caregiving. Don't act so high and mighty for a part-timer. I was so appalled by what I was hearing. I couldn't even reply. They didn't seem to understand that I was balancing the housework with caregiving, all while earning a steady income. Moreover, it seemed that my mother-in-law had told Alan that she was the one taking care of my father-in-law, making it sound like I was a homemaker who did nothing. There were several times when I thought about leaving that house. I did consider it, but the reason I ended up staying was because of my father-in-law. Ever since I got married, my father-in-law always treated me very kindly, unlike Alan and my mother-in-law. And he always told me things like this. Sarah, I'm grateful to have a wonderful daughter-in-law like you. I'm sorry for everything. Father-in-law, I don't find it hard to care for you. Why would you say that? Of course, I feel bad asking you to take care of me like this. But more than that, I feel terrible about my wife and son. Everything's been left to you, and they do as they please, right? Yes, that's right. I realize that it's thanks to your hard work that our household finances are being kept afloat. Ellen's income alone wouldn't be enough to maintain this household. Father-in-law, you knew all this time? It seemed that father-in-law had understood our family's situation for quite some time, and every time he received care, he would show his appreciation with heartwarming words. I truly loved such a father-in-law and even came to enjoy caring for him. What would happen to this house if I left? I had anxiety about who would take care of my beloved father-in-law, so I decided to be the one to provide proper care until passed away. A year later, my father-in-law left this world. During the funeral for my beloved father-in-law, I couldn't stop the tears. Sarah, why are you crying so much? What? Father-in-law has passed away. Isn't mourning like this natural? I've been his caregiver all this time. My response seemed to infuriate my mother-in-law. You make it sound as if I never took care of him at all. The truth is, my mother-in-law hardly took care of my father-in-law. She was always busy with her hobbies, going out all the time. Since I was home, she didn't need to do any caregiving or housework. She even put on a tearful act in front of the relatives, as if she were the oppressed and pitiful mother-in-law. To outsiders, it probably seemed as if I was the cruel daughter-in-law. They would defend her, saying, "Don't be so hard on mother-in-law," and blame me instead. Even though I was just mourning my father-in-law's death, I was being criticized by people who understood nothing, which made me angry. I decided to distance myself from the relatives. That's when Ellen took notice of me and came over to complain. "You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. I was only crying about father-in-law's death. Despite that, your mom came over and told me it was strange for me to cry. Didn't you make it sound like she hadn't taken care of Dad at all? I never said such a thing. I just talked about mourning the loss of my father-in-law, whom I had always cared for. Perhaps it sounded like criticism to you because, in reality, your mom did nothing. Are you insulting Mom? I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just stating the facts. And by the way, if it bothers you so much, you could have done more to care for father-in-law too. If you're so upset about it, you should have cared for him yourself. What business is it of yours? Why are you criticizing me? How can it be none of my business? It's only natural that you, his blood relative, would take care of him. I'm working for this family. Taking care of the house or relatives are wife duties. That's absurd. Don't be so ridiculous. I'm working too, you know. Our argument escalated, and the relatives had to intervene. Although they stopped our argument, I didn't speak to my husband at all after that. Once all the funeral proceedings were finished, a lawyer came to explain the inheritance. I'd like to discuss the contents of the will regarding your late father's estate. First, to the wife and the daughter-in-law, Sarah, he's left half of his cash to each of you. And to his son, Alan, he's left ownership of the family land and home. What? If Alan gets the land and the house, doesn't that mean all the other assets go to the wife? Why is Sarah receiving an inheritance? I'm his wife. Your husband was deeply grateful to Sarah for the dedicated care that she gave him. He wanted to give her part of the inheritance as a sign of his gratitude. As this is the decision he made, it cannot be changed. I can't believe it. Oh, I get it. You were caring for him just to get the inheritance, weren't you? How could you think that? That has to be it. Otherwise, there's no way you could have been so devoted to him despite not being related by blood. I had a good relationship with my father-in-law ever since I got married. I took care of him to express my gratitude for that. Are you saying that you tried to let me, someone who isn't related by blood, take care of your own husband? Isn't that like psychological abuse? Don't be ridiculous. Fine, I won't bring it up anymore. Appearing frustrated that she couldn't say anything else inappropriate in front of the lawyer, my mother-in-law continued. So, that was Dad's decision. It's gratitude for Sarah's caregiving, right? If that's the case, then we have no choice but to follow it. May I continue? All right, well, your father stated that it's no longer necessary to rely on Sarah. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law's face, which had been dissatisfied just moments ago, suddenly broke into a smile. Yes, that's great. I understand. Huh? What do you mean? My mother-in-law seemed pleased, but my husband was confused. He didn't seem to understand what she was saying. So, in the end, Sarah's inheritance is nothing more than severance pay. It's not gratitude at all. Now that Dad's caregiving is over, we don't need Sarah in this house anymore. My mother-in-law had misunderstood my father-in-law's will, just as intended. The truth is, my father-in-law had discussed this with me before. My father-in-law wanted me to be free from this house after he passed away. He used the will to cleverly deceive my husband and mother-in-law, making it seem natural that I should leave. And just as my father-in-law had planned, my mother-in-law, completely misunderstanding his true intentions, saw the will as a chance to kick me out. Pretending to be shocked by the will, so as not to let on that I actually wanted to leave, I said, "Father-in-law, why would you treat me like this? See, even to Dad, you were just someone that would take care of him. Ellen, you can't understand Sarah anymore, right? Why don't you just divorce her? Ellen, you'll still stay married to me, right?" As I looked at Alan with tears in my eyes, he thought about it for a while and then said, "You know what? Let's get a divorce. I've inherited the family home and land, and Mom got some money too. There's no longer any need to worry about caregiving, so there's no problem if Sarah goes." What do you mean by that? Just what I said. I feel bad for asking, but could you leave our house and agree to the divorce? Understood. I guess there's no place for me here anymore. Saying such with a bit of restraint, I took a document out of the drawer and handed it to my husband. After that time we fought, I went and got this. No mistake, the document was a notice of filing for divorce. My husband promptly signed it. Finally, I don't have to deal with you anymore. A non-working freeloader should just get out. Laughs. You should be grateful for us having put up with you. A total freeloader. Is that so? Okay, I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for things up to now. By the way, since the lawyer is here, I want to check one thing. It's okay that I don't get any more than what I've already received from father-in-law's estate, right? Of course. You seem to have gotten a bit smarter, Sarah. You've been living off me until now. So don't even think about squeezing any more money out of me. Well, I suppose you're right. All right, it's settled then. Please make yourself disappear quickly. I promptly packed my things and left my in-laws' house. Watching me leave, my mother-in-law looked as pleased as could be. They had no idea what would happen to this house in the future. After leaving my in-laws' house, I immediately submitted the divorce notice to City Hall. And when I arrived at the apartment I had rented in advance, I couldn't help but shout out loud in the spacious room, "Finally, I can be by myself. This is great." I was overwhelmed with joy to be freed from such a difficult marriage, and I was truly grateful to my father-in-law for devising the plan to help me escape my in-laws' home. Afterwards, I enjoyed a comfortable life living on my own, because I was able to get used to working remotely while living at my in-laws' place. I had become better at managing my time, and work went smoothly. Thanks to that, my income increased, and I was living a comfortable life without anyone bothering me. Until one day, my ex-husband Alan called me. "It's been a while. Why are you calling me? We're in a pinch. Sarah, please help us." "What kind of joke is this? Weren't you the ones who told me to disappear?" "My salary hasn't changed, but for some reason, we're running out of money. We can't live like this." "Oh dear," laughs. "That's a problem, isn't it?" I decided to deliver the final blow. "That's because you no longer have my income to support you." "Huh? What do you mean? You still don't get it? Didn't you notice while living so lavishly that your salary alone was not enough? I had thought that we could live on my salary alone, but you're telling me that's not the case?" "Of course. You squandered your entire salary on yourself. We only got by because I was the one paying for our living expenses. Maybe it's about time you and your mother learned some financial responsibility as adults." "That's... How much were you making then?" "Let's see. At that time, I was making about $4,800 a month, maybe?" "That's more than me." "That's right. You didn't know, did you? By the way, now I'm earning even more than that, with no one to get in my way," laughs. Even through the phone, I could clearly feel my husband's frustration. "Hey, Sarah, can't we start over?" "Eh? It was a mistake to let you go. I want to make things right again." "Huh? It's obvious you're after my income. Are you stupid?" "That's not true. I still love you, Sarah. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see your face again. By the way, what happened to the inheritance your mother received? With that amount, she should be living comfortably, right? That's the thing. It's about to run out. That's impossible. It was nearly $100,000, right? That's not an amount you can use up in just a few months. Mom and I spent it on shopping sprees, overseas trips, and half of it disappeared in the casino. A foolish mother breeds a foolish son. I have nothing more to say to you. Besides, I'm a stranger now, so I can't do anything for you, and I don't want to. Don't be so heartless. Help me. This has nothing to do with me. There's nothing more to talk about, so I'm hanging up. Don't call me again." Saying this, I ended the call on my end and promptly canceled the contract for the mobile phone I was using. What became of my ex-husband and mother-in-law afterward is none of my business, and I do not know. However, about a year after that call, I passed by my mother-in-law's house and it had become an empty lot. They probably had to let go of the house due to financial reasons. Well, it's really none of my business anyway. As for me, with my newfound spare time, I started going to a wine class that I had been interested in for some time. There, I met a man 2 years my senior who took me seriously, and after dating for a year and a half, we got married. He is the ace of a well-known company that many people are aware of, and despite his high salary, he is humble with a warm and wonderful character. He respects my career, and we enjoy a fulfilling married life filled with mutual respect. These days, I feel that maybe all this retribution was a gift from my father-in-law. "This is where my parents live," Mark suddenly declared upon his visit. Behind him, his in-laws nodded happily. I was in the middle of an online meeting and quickly apologized to the other party before ending the call. I had even told them about a meeting at 1 p.m. Irritated, I turned my gaze towards the door. "Why did you come all of a sudden?" I asked them, maintaining my composure. My father-in-law proudly replied, "We'll pay off the mortgage, so please leave." It was hard to suppress a laugh at his statement. My mother-in-law had never worked, and my father-in-law was just staying at home without any employment. Yet, Mark was completely in favor of his parents' opinion. Disappointed by his stance, I considered divorce. Then, I'll leave, I quickly replied, to the surprise of all three of them. The mortgage of the house is $5,000 per month. With an inward smile, I began to pack seriously. Luckily, I had a business trip scheduled for a week starting from the next day. With my suitcase and bankbook ready, I headed to the entrance. Goodbye then, I said that as I left the house. First, I'd start by transferring the house's title to Mark. I felt excited thinking about my future plans. My name is Shelley Owen. I am 47 years old and work as a web designer. I went independent 5 years ago and have been fortunate enough to receive many projects. As a result, I've earned more than 5 times my previous salary and now live on the top floor of a high-rise condo. I met Mark, my husband, 3 years ago through Ashley, my former boss. He is Ashley's cousin. He's kind and honest but had trouble maintaining relationships, so he had been single for a long time. Around that time, my business was doing well and I bought the top floor of a high-rise condo, doubling as an office. I wasn't planning on marrying, but Ashley strongly suggested I meet Mark. When I met him, he was very gentle and attractive, looking much younger than his actual age. He listened to me talk about my job and complimented me a lot, which drew me to him quickly. We started dating and got engaged within 6 months. My parents had already passed away, and my only relative was my brother. So, my brother and his wife also attended the family meeting. From Mark's side, his parents and cousin Ashley came. The meeting went smoothly overall. However, my sister-in-law's comment, "This seems deaf," left me puzzled. I never imagined her words would become reality. After marrying, Mark moved into my house, and we started our life together. His workplace was harsh, requiring him to leave early in the morning and return home past midnight. Despite this, his salary was only a quarter of mine. I suggested to Mark, who was exhausted and went to sleep immediately every day, "It's bad for your health. Why don't you look for another job?" However, he reprimanded me with a face full of anger. "Are you saying I should quit my job? Are you looking down on me because I earn less?" I was surprised by Mark's strong reaction, as we had never argued before. Feeling uncomfortable about unintentionally disrespecting his job, I decided to apologize sincerely. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I'm just worried about your health." My apologies, too. I overreacted. You've always taken care of the house, and I shouldn't have scolded you. With Mark quickly calming down and apologizing, our first argument ended swiftly. However, it became difficult to suggest a job change afterward. Mark's return time got even later, and he eventually spent half the week at the office. While I was concerned about his health, he seemed to enjoy his job. So, I decided to support him as much as I could, creating a relaxing environment whenever he returned home. "Hey, about my dad's medical expenses, could we increase the remittance a bit?" Mark suggested this when his father was in the hospital with back pain. Sighing inwardly at his request in his father's hospital room, I didn't hesitate to help my in-laws, as I had no parents of my own. Our household depended on my income, with Mark contributing a part of his salary to his parents. His salary wasn't low for a man in his 40s, but the exact amount he kept for himself was unclear. However, it was evident he was providing enough for his parents not to struggle. I couldn't agree when he insisted on increasing the remittance because it was in the first place possible only due to my income. Yet, it was hard to refuse in front of his parents. "Mark, you're really kind. Thank you so much. It's a big help," they said, looking at me and Mark. Under their pressure, I reluctantly agreed to increase the remittance. Afterward, my in-laws started demanding money for various reasons, not just the remittance. I wanted to refuse, but they knew I would say no, so they approached Mark instead. Especially weak to his mother's requests, Mark often decided to increase the remittance whenever she asked. And on the day his father returned from the hospital, after sending my in-laws off in a taxi, Mark and I returned home only to find, surprisingly, that his parents, who were supposed to have gone home, were waiting outside our house. It's tough for Dad to climb our stairs, so I thought we'd take care of him here until his back is fully healed. What? You can't just spring that on me. My surprised reaction made my mother-in-law frown. My father-in-law stood in front of the door as if to say, "Let us in quickly." "Mark, that's okay, right?" "Of course. Don't worry," Mark replied, and I stared at him in shock. He avoided my gaze. From his reaction, I realized that Mark and his parents had already discussed this. "Fine. You can stay here until you're fully recovered." I said that reluctantly and invited my in-laws inside. They looked around the house and sat on the living room sofa. Look, they live in such a nice house. Our house is 50 years old and falling apart, right, Dad? Yeah, it's really run down. Getting old is tough. My in-laws conversed, and Mark just nodded. It seemed they planned to stay here for a long time. To be honest, since I was sending them a substantial amount of money every time, living together might be less of a financial burden. However, that's not enough reason to accept living together. Renovating old houses is trendy these days. "How about doing that, Mark?" I suggested. "Yeah, maybe," Mark replied vaguely. 2 years into our marriage, though it's supposedly still in the honeymoon phase, we hardly spend time together. We haven't even gone on a honeymoon, and this place was my home and office. It's fine when Mark is out for work, but my in-laws would be here all day. With them around, meetings in the living room become difficult. If we were to live together, I'd prefer moving into my in-laws' house and using this place solely as an office. Thanks to my initial resistance, the in-laws didn't bring up living together again. However, even months after my father-in-law's discharge from the hospital, my mother-in-law showed no intention of taking him back, only returning to their home to clean. Moreover, their belongings started overflowing from the guest room into the living room. "Mark, your dad seems perfectly healthy now. He even went bowling today. Maybe it's time for them to go home." "What are you saying? Sending my dad back with his bad back is cruel. What if it gets worse?" Mark raised his voice, and I fell silent. Seeing my reaction, Mark seemed to think that raising his voice would make me comply. He frequently insisted loudly on his opinions. Though I didn't always comply, opposing him led to my mother-in-law siding with Mark, putting me in a 3-to-1 disadvantage. This went on for 2 years. During this time, I took care of all the housework while my in-laws often went out to enjoy themselves. Despite his back being fully healed, my father-in-law showed no signs of returning home. "Sorry, I have a meeting at 1 p.m. today, so I'll eat lunch in my room." "Okay, but leave the dishes for later," my mother-in-law replied without looking up as I put lunch on the table. Mark had taken the day off and was planning to go out with my in-laws in the afternoon. He wouldn't take time off for our anniversary but would do so on his parents' requests. Thinking this, I responded, understood, and headed to my office. Right at 1 p.m., my online meeting started, but about 10 minutes in, footsteps approached, and the door burst open. "This is where me and my parents live," Mark declared, barging into the room with my in-laws nodding behind him. I hastily apologized to the meeting participants and ended the call. "I told you I had a meeting at 1 p.m., I complained internally while heading towards the door. "Why are you doing this all of a sudden?" I asked calmly, only for my father-in-law to smugly say, "We'll pay the mortgage, so you can leave." I struggled to suppress my laughter at his words. My mother-in-law had never worked, and my father-in-law stayed at home without working. Yet, Mark completely supported them. Deciding on divorce, I simply said, "All right, I'll leave," surprising all 3 of them. The house mortgage is $5,000 per month. Smiling inwardly, I started packing with a serious expression. Luckily, I had a week-long business trip starting the next day. With my prepared suitcase and bank book, I headed for the entrance. "Goodbye then," I said before leaving my home. The first thing to do was to transfer the house title to Mark. Feeling excited about the next steps, I checked into a hotel and immediately contacted a real estate agent to transfer the house to Mark, including the mortgage. The transfer depended on Mark's ability to pay the mortgage. If he couldn't, he'd have to make a lump sum payment or sell the house. I accepted this and asked the agent to find me a new home and office. My work could be done from anywhere with a computer, but I needed an office for calm discussions with clients. The agent found a suitable place about 40 minutes drive from my previous place. It was well equipped, with excellent security. I viewed it and decided to buy it immediately after returning from the trip. It was a luxurious apartment, almost like a villa. It felt a bit too luxurious, but I considered it a reward for my efforts and decided to buy it. I could move in within a week, so I stayed in temporary accommodation until then. After all the necessary documents were ready, I left the packing and moving process to a moving company. Mark apparently hadn't been informed about the mortgage transfer. During the move, my in-laws and Mark helped while speaking ill of me. When the movers finished, one commented, "You have a difficult family," making me blush with embarrassment. A week later, after settling into my new home, I received a call from Mark. "Shelly, what's this about changing the mortgage?" He asked anxiously, with his father shouting in the background. "Tell her to come back quickly." It seemed that Mark finally understood the situation about the mortgage. "But we're getting a divorce, right? It's unfair for me to pay the mortgage if you're the ones living there." "Divorce? I never mentioned anything about a divorce," Mark exclaimed. However, I couldn't agree with him if he intended to act like they never told me to leave the house. I pressed the play button on the nearby computer, and our conversation from that day started playing. "Why did you record this?" Mark was startled. "I was in a web meeting, so I recorded it for documentation," I explained. "I usually use an IC recorder for meetings and share the recorded audio after getting consent from the other party." I had mentioned this to Mark before, but he seemed to have forgotten. "Really? Is that true?" Mark sounded flustered over the phone. "So, good luck with the mortgage repayments. But first, you'll have to pass the credit check," I said. "How much is the mortgage anyway? Can I afford it on my salary?" Mark asked, which made me laugh. I had clearly informed him about the monthly mortgage amount when we got married, and I had shown him all the documents. But it seemed he never paid attention, thinking I would end up paying. "Let's see if you can. The mortgage is $5,000 a month." "What? Didn't you hear me? I'll say it again. The monthly mortgage amount is $5,000. Did you hear that?" Upon hearing the mortgage amount, Mark was speechless on the other end of the phone. I could hear his mother asking, "Mark, how much is it? $1,000? Maybe $2,000? Either way, it can't be that much." Mark was too shocked to answer her question. Then his mother took the phone, and I had a new conversation partner. "Where are you? The mortgage can't be that much." She sounded irritated and started to tell me how incompetent I was as a wife. She insisted that I should pay the mortgage because I had caused them trouble. After finishing her rant with a triumphant tone, she said, "Don't think you can come back for Mark's salary. We won't help you anymore." It seemed Mark hadn't told his parents about his actual salary. A son who sends us so much money every month can't be struggling financially. He'll keep taking care of us, so we have no worries. His mother confidently continued. I couldn't help but burst into laughter while listening to his mother boasting. My sudden laughter angered her. I decided to give her a dose of reality. $4,000. What? The mortgage? No, that's Mark's monthly salary. What? Really? She was shocked by my words and seemed frozen for a while, but then she started laughing. That's impossible. Mark has been sending us $4,000 every month. If his salary is really $4,000, he would have been sending us all of it. Stop lying. That's right, but I've been covering all his personal expenses and pocket money. That's how he could send the money. That's a lie, she yelled, not believing me. I calmly pointed her to the evidence. Look at the shelf right by the entrance of the living room. You'll find Mark's salary slips there. If you doubt it, check for yourself. Humph, you're just lying, she said and headed to the indicated shelf. I could hear Mark trying to stop her in the background. Soon, her voice of surprise came through the phone. What? There's not even $4,000 here. Mark, what's the meaning of this? Mark's actual salary turned out to be even lower than I knew. I could hear the in-laws questioning Mark in the background. You might not hear me, but just so you know, the house mortgage is $5,000 a month. Take care, I said as loudly as possible. Whether they heard me or not, I ended the call. Mark called again several times later, but I ignored them all. Let's discuss this through a lawyer from now on, I texted him and then ignored any further communication. The lawyer I hired dealt with frequent contacts in the following days, which soon quieted down. I promptly filed for compensation through my lawyer. After a while, a response came through my lawyer, and I couldn't help but laugh at its contents. It seemed to be co-authored by a team of liars. Mark's side had hired lawyers too, but their claims were laughable. The allegations by Shelley are false, and the real victim is our client. We demand compensation for emotional distress. All I could say to my lawyer was, I'm sorry. The divorce was nearing, but our relationship as a couple was still ongoing. I wanted to get away from a husband who could make such demands. My client wants to meet and discuss in person. It seems Mark doesn't know about this, my lawyer said, handing me a letter. The letter briefly requested to verify the truth behind Mark's claims. I agreed through my lawyer and chose a location far from my current residence for precaution. At the scheduled meeting with the opposing lawyer, Mark didn't show up. The lawyer was young and polite, greeting me properly upon arrival. He revealed that his client was actually Mark's mother. According to him, Mark remained silent during their discussions, keeping his head down. His parents kept accusing me, claiming I fabricated fault to demand compensation. As I listened to this, the lawyer handed me a document. It detailed the malicious actions I allegedly committed. However, the lawyer felt that it was intentionally crafted to demean me. I explained each point in detail. The opposing lawyer nodded earnestly, showing understanding. My lawyer presented evidence in line with my explanations. I see, the content of your statements is completely different. You, Shelley, have solid evidence and a strong case, he commented. This part is reversed. Which part? After I pointed out and corrected a mistake, the opposing lawyer was visibly shocked. Once the explanation concluded, he left the room with the same politeness as when he arrived. My lawyer and I strategized to expose Mark and his parents' falsehoods. We also reached out to other relevant parties to set up a meeting to discuss compensation. About a month after the meeting with the opposing lawyer, Mark and his parents arrived, looking haggard. His mother glared at me as if seeing an enemy. You seem to be enjoying all this trouble. Who do you think is responsible for this situation? She seemed dissatisfied with the private dining room I had chosen. It was unfortunate that she didn't like the upscale restaurant she used to favor. However, her irritation might also be influenced by the fact that the opposing lawyer, having learned the truth, dropped their defense. Mother, you used to like this place, right? I thought you'd be pleased, I said deliberately, but she responded with an unhappy face. We entered the restaurant, greeted by the staff who were informed about the situation, and led to a private room. Mark didn't speak until we were seated in the room, then suddenly became emotional. Shelley, I was wrong. Please help me. I can't survive like this. I'll do anything you say from now on. Please come back. Mark's parents were stunned by this unexpected plea. I smiled kindly at Mark, and he seemed momentarily relieved. However, I signaled my lawyer, who then handed Mark a document. Reading it, Mark turned pale. What is this? What's wrong, Mark? Show me. While Mark struggled for words, his mother snatched the document, glaring at me furiously. The document contained Mark's claims, each refuted in red ink. Shelley, how dare you underestimate us? Enough is enough. Unfortunately, Mother, I'm only telling the truth. She gritted her teeth at my response. Suddenly, my face was splashed with water. How dare you still act so arrogantly? Even as a daughter-in-law, we tolerated your infertility, so you should be grateful and dedicated to your husband's family. To my shock, it was my father-in-law who had thrown the water. He glared at me, panting. Incredible to throw water during a meeting, especially with lawyers present. I burst into laughter at the absurdity. My laughter surprised everyone, including my lawyer. Still laughing, I responded to his anger. Yes, it seems I wasn't the perfect wife. I had my earnings taken, was burdened with all household chores, and even though I said I didn't want children, I was berated for being infertile. I'm not strong enough to endure that. Still defiant. You should understand by now. Once we're divorced, I'll have nothing to do with you. How about her as a new wife candidate? She's young, might be good for you. I signaled my lawyer, who, regaining composure, pulled out a photograph. It showed Mark entering a hotel with a young woman. What is this? I took it. Entering the room was my former boss and Mark's cousin, Ashley. Mark was shocked and speechless at the sight of Ashley. Ashley sat next to me and handed me a handkerchief. Uncle, Aunt, I didn't introduce Mark to Shelley to make her unhappy. Ashley, this is a misunderstanding, you see. His mother began making excuses to Ashley in a sweet voice. Ashley's parents are Mark's uncle and aunt, and his parents can't be too assertive with them. Ashley had informed me that her parents were angry about this matter, so it's likely they will reprimand his parents. Seeing Mark and his parents quiet down, I submitted the divorce application and documents related to compensation. Mark seemed to want to say something but remained silent under Ashley's sharp gaze, promptly signing the documents. By the way, this woman has a message for you. She wasn't aware that you were already married. She had already met with my parents and booked a wedding venue, calling this a fraud. She is demanding compensation, so be prepared. What? That can't be true. Shocked by the decisive message, Mark began to cry in despair. Mark had been matching with young women on a dating site multiple times. The woman in the photo was one of them and apparently deeply loved him. This revelation shocked his parents, too. His father, surprised by the situation, was stunned. Actually, Ashley had investigated Mark's infidelity, explained the situation to the woman, and introduced her to a lawyer. I never met the woman directly, but I was pained by her apology over the phone. Shelley, divorce seems inevitable with irreconcilable differences. But about the house, shouldn't the mortgage payments be considered? His mother started, so I informed her that Mark was now the owner of the house and that it was being sold because he failed the credit assessment. No way. His mother slumped in despair. We then left the restaurant. Within a month, Ashley informed me that Mark and his parents had moved from the high-rise condo to an apartment. Due to his parents' spending habits, Mark's salary alone couldn't sustain them, and they had even asked Ashley for rent assistance. The compensation for both the deceived woman on the dating site and myself was being covered by Ashley's parents, with Mark repaying them. Surprisingly, Ashley had started dating Mark's former lawyer. She was drawn to his decisiveness. We never know what life will bring, she said, looking very happy. As for me, I started blogging about these events, which unexpectedly garnered attention, leading to new opportunities as a writer. Enjoying writing, I lead a busy yet fulfilling life. In fact, since the divorce, I've been strongly pursued by a corporate executive I knew through business, and recently our relationship turned romantic. He's trustworthy and has suggested we live together, but I'm still pondering my response. In truth, my mind is already made up. I just need the courage to convey my decision. Looking forward to our date tomorrow. Today, I'm again seated in front of my computer,